Chicago is a city of skyscrapers, bustling streets, and deep, sometimes dark, history. Beyond the daytime crowds and glowing city lights, there are places where the past refuses to remain silent. Places where whispers echo in empty halls, footsteps resonate when no one walks nearby, and shadowy figures linger in the corners of your vision. Tonight, we step into 5 of Chicago's most haunted museums locations, filled with dark energy, restless spirits, and the kind of chills that linger long after you leave. These aren't just museums, they're gateways to the spectral echoes of the city's history. Prepare yourself as we journey into the unknown. The Field Museum in Chicago, celebrated for its vast natural history collections, holds a reputation that stretches beyond fossils and artifacts. Beneath its gleaming exhibits and polished floors lies a darker, more mysterious side one that has fascinated both staff and visitors who have encountered the unexplained. Late at night, when the museum is empty of tourists and the echo of footsteps fades into silence, employees have reported strange occurrences that suggest they are not truly alone. Among the most frequently cited phenomena are sightings around the dinosaur skeletons, towering fossilized remains of creatures that roamed the earth millions of years ago are usually silent testaments to the past. But some night staff have described seeing shadowy figures moving between the exhibits. These apparitions are often fleeting, visible only from the corner of one's eye, yet their presence is palpable. There have been multiple accounts of a dark, human-shaped figure standing near the massive T-Rex skeleton, watching silently before vanishing into the darkness of the hall. The air is said to grow colder in these moments, an unexplainable chill that seeps into the bones, giving staff the uneasy sensation that the building itself is alive with unseen observers. The Egyptian Artifacts exhibit is another hotspot for ghostly activity. Staff members report hearing faint whispers or the soft shuffling of footsteps around the cases displaying mummies and ancient relics. Some claim to have heard voices in languages they do not understand, a kind of linguistic echo that seems to rise from the very walls. Even when no other personnel are nearby, the sound of someone moving through the hallways is unmistakable, sometimes punctuated by the occasional clink of a glass display case settling. Curators and night guards alike have confessed to feeling an invisible presence close enough to brush past them, creating a sense of being followed. Yet no one is ever there when they turn to look. Visitors who stay until closing have also reported unnerving experiences. Some recount moments when they felt sudden chills sweep over them while standing in front of a particular exhibit, even on warm days. Others notice small items subtly shifted from their original positions, suggesting that someone or something has been touching them. A chair left near the exhibit area might be slightly angled differently, or a pamphlet may be found lying on the floor, despite being neatly stacked just minutes before. These subtle disturbances may seem minor, yet they contribute to an overarching sense that the museum harbors an awareness of its guests, a consciousness not bound by the present. The Field Museum's history adds another layer of intrigue to these phenomena. Opened in 1921, the museum has been a cornerstone of Chicago's cultural landscape for over a century. Over the decades, thousands of individuals have walked its halls, many working late hours cataloging specimens, preparing exhibitions, or conducting research. Some theorists suggest that the residual energy of so many lives, coupled with the museum's vast collection of historical artifacts, creates an environment conducive to paranormal activity. The mummies, fossils, and ancient cultural objects may serve as anchors for this energy, drawing in curious spirits and restless presences alike. One of the more striking reports comes from night security guards who patrolled the Hall of Gems and Minerals. On multiple occasions, guards have heard the sound of footsteps echoing across the polished floors, footsteps that do not match their own pacing. When investigating, they find the hall completely empty, with every case securely locked. In one account, a guard described seeing a faint shadow glide past the Peruvian artifacts, almost like a human silhouette in motion, only for it to disappear upon closer inspection. Such encounters are often accompanied by a sudden drop in temperature, leaving the witness shivering and acutely aware of the eerie quiet that follows. The atmosphere of the Hall of Ancient Cultures is particularly unsettling during after-hours tours. Staff members report feeling watched while examining the intricate masks, ceramics, and textiles from distant lands. In some instances, soft whispers are heard, calling attention to specific artifacts as though guiding or warning the observer. These whispers are usually fleeting, indistinct, and impossible to trace, yet they leave an undeniable impression that something unseen is present. The museum, with its towering ceilings and shadowed corners, seems to amplify these sensations, allowing the unknown to feel almost tangible. Paranormal investigators who have explored the Field Museum claim to have recorded anomalous readings using electromagnetic field meters and audio recording devices. Sudden spikes in EMF activity appear near certain exhibits, particularly in the Dinosaur Hall and the Egyptian collection. EVP recordings reportedly capture faint, indecipherable murmurs, and on occasion, faint footsteps are heard during playback, even though the investigators were alone at the time. While skeptics argue that the phenomena may be explainable through building acoustics or residual noise, the consistency of these reports over decades suggests a more mysterious presence at work. The stories of the Field Museum's hauntings have become part of the lore for staff and locals alike. Employees, especially those who work late-night shifts, often share tales of shadows passing through the halls. The eerie sense of being observed, and objects that subtly change position overnight. For visitors brave enough to linger after hours, the experience can be unnerving, a reminder that the museum is more than a static repository of history. It is a place where the echoes of the past linger, where spirits may still walk the halls, and where the line between the living and the departed occasionally blurs. Ultimately, the Field Museum's appeal lies not only in its extraordinary collections, but also in the stories that have grown up around them. The whispered tales of unseen presences and ghostly figures add a chilling layer to the visitor experience, transforming a simple museum visit into an encounter with the unknown. Whether the sightings are the product of imagination, history, or the restless spirits of those who once walked the halls, the Field Museum remains a place where the past feels alive and, sometimes disturbingly present, for those venturing through its corridors late at night. It is worth remembering that the towering skeletons, ancient relics, and glittering gems may not be the only things observing you. Somewhere among the fossils and artifacts, shadows linger, whispers echo, and an unseen presence silently follows, reminding all who enter that history is never truly at rest. The Art Institute of Chicago, known worldwide for its vast collection of art spanning centuries, is a place where beauty and history intersect, but it is also a site of eerie, unexplained phenomena. Behind the serene halls and quiet galleries, tales of ghostly encounters have persisted for decades. Primarily after the museum closes and the crowds vanish, security guards, curators, and night staff have shared chilling experiences that suggest the Art Institute is not entirely devoid of life when the lights go out. One of the most commonly reported experiences occurs in the European galleries. Staff members patrolling these quiet halls often hear footsteps echoing on marble floors, despite being alone. The sound of soft, deliberate steps following their own has unsettled even the most seasoned guards. Sometimes, when they turn corners expecting to see a colleague, there is nothing, only the lingering sound of footsteps fading into the distance. In other instances, security personnel report a sudden, oppressive sensation of being watched, particularly near paintings by old masters. It is as if unseen eyes are scrutinizing their every move, fixating on those who dare linger too long. Several eyewitness accounts describe the appearance of a woman dressed in Victorian attire. She is often seen standing silently before a painting, her gaze unwavering, her figure perfectly still. The descriptions are consistent: a long, dark dress, a high-collared blouse, and a faintly shimmering outline that seems almost out of place in the modern museum. Visitors who have glimpsed her claim she vanishes when approached, leaving no trace of where she has gone. Some theorize that she may be a lingering spirit of a past patron or an individual from the museum's earlier history, eternally captivated by the art she once admired in life. Other areas of the museum, such as the modern and contemporary galleries, are said to carry their own spectral energy. Staff members report seeing shadows dart across walls or the corners of their vision, moving against the flow of light in ways that defy explanation. Occasionally, faint whispers are heard when no one else is present, often seeming to come from the direction of certain paintings. Some guards describe the feeling as if the voices are offering guidance, warnings, or fragments of conversations long lost to time. The phenomena are unpredictable, sometimes occurring during quiet nights and other times during moments of unusual activity, leaving those present on edge. The museum's expansive storage and back-office areas are also sources of unsettling occurrences. Archivists and curators working late at night often experience cold drafts that appear without warning, lingering in specific corners or near certain cabinets. Items sometimes shift inexplicably. A book left on a desk may fall to the floor, or a stack of papers may appear disturbed despite meticulous organization. These minor disturbances create a sense that the space itself has a will, as if unseen hands are rearranging objects, observing staff, or asserting a subtle presence in the otherwise quiet halls. One particularly chilling story comes from a night security guard who experienced what he described as a full encounter in the Impressionist gallery. While making his rounds, he noticed the air grow unusually cold, despite the heating system functioning normally. Then, he saw her, the Victorian woman standing in front of a Monet, her posture rigid and her face obscured in shadow. When he cautiously stepped closer, she vanished completely, leaving behind a faint scent reminiscent of aged perfume. The guard later reported that the same gallery felt heavier in the following weeks, and other employees noted similar sensations of unease when passing through the same area. Paranormal investigators who have been invited to the Art Institute have captured intriguing anomalies. EMF meters often spike near specific exhibits, and audio recordings sometimes reveal indistinct murmurs, laughter, or footsteps that were not present during recording. Nevertheless, the consistency of eyewitness reports over the years lends weight to the notion that something beyond the natural world exists within these historic walls. Even beyond the European and contemporary galleries, other sectors of the museum carry their share of eerie reports. The Asian and African art collections, with their intricate masks, sculptures, and ceremonial objects, have been linked to unusual cold spots and whispers. Visitors and staff report a sensation of presence lingering near particularly old or sacred pieces, as if the energy of those artifacts attracts and holds residual spirits. Some describe fleeting glimpses of shadowy figures moving between the display cases, never fully materializing, but enough to evoke a sense of tension and unease. The Art Institute of Chicago's reputation as a hub for paranormal activity has grown alongside its cultural prestige. Stories circulate among night staff, security personnel, and dedicated visitors who stay late for private tours or research. Many have come to accept the possibility that the museum's extensive history, combined with the presence of priceless artifacts from multiple eras, creates an environment ripe for spectral activity. The ghosts, if they exist, seem intertwined with the institution's history, quietly observing, occasionally interacting, but always remaining elusive. Whether these experiences are the product of imagination, residual energy, or actual spirits is impossible to confirm. Yet the sheer number of consistent reports suggests that the Art Institute holds more than just artistic treasures within its walls. For those who walk its halls after dark, the museum transforms from a serene sanctuary of art into a place of suspense, where shadows may move, footsteps may follow, and the eyes of long-departed visitors may silently watch. For visitors and staff alike, it becomes clear that the Art Institute of Chicago is a living testament not only to human creativity, but also to the mysteries that linger alongside it. The beauty and history of the exhibits are entwined with whispers from the past, fleeting shadows, and the silent gaze of unseen watchers. Anyone venturing through its galleries late at night should remember that they may not be alone. The echoes of history continue to inhabit these halls, silently observing and waiting. The Chicago History Museum, standing proudly in Lincoln Park, is more than just a repository of the city's storied past. It is also a site where the boundaries between history and the supernatural blur. While the museum preserves artifacts, documents, and photographs spanning Chicago's rich and often turbulent history, staff and visitors alike have long reported inexplicable occurrences that suggest the presence of restless spirits lingering among the exhibits. One of the most common reports comes from the museum's archival rooms. Researchers and staff working late into the evening often describe feeling sudden chills or the sensation of being closely observed, even when alone. Some claim to have felt unseen hands brushing lightly against their arms or shoulders, as if someone long dead is guiding, warning, or simply acknowledging their presence. These subtle touches are fleeting but unmistakable, leaving a lingering sense of unease that is difficult to ignore. Auditory phenomena are also widely reported. Many night staff and occasional late visitors have described hearing the faint sound of typing emanating from empty offices, the rhythmic clatter of keys echoing through corridors devoid of human activity. At times, soft murmuring is heard near old photograph collections and archival drawers, voices indistinct yet insistent, as though historians or clerks from long ago are continuing their work beyond the veil of death. The sounds are most pronounced in rooms that house documents from Chicago's earliest days, leading some to speculate that the energy of those who recorded and preserved history has become trapped, endlessly replaying their routines. Some staff members recount seeing shadows moving across walls or at the edges of their vision. These shadows are not accompanied by any physical source of light or reflection. They appear and vanish almost imperceptibly, leaving observers questioning their own senses. In several cases, employees have claimed to see the fleeting figure of a man in late 19th century attire, quietly studying exhibits or moving between rooms. He is said to disappear entirely when approached, leaving behind only the faint smell of old books or ink, a sensory trace that lingers far longer than the vision itself. Visitors, too, have occasionally felt the weight of this supernatural presence. Those who wander the museum in quiet moments, particularly after dusk, often describe the sensation of being watched while viewing old photographs of Chicago streets, political figures, or city events. Some report hearing whispers of conversation just beyond comprehension, faint yet persistent, that seem to emanate directly from the historical artifacts. Even the most skeptical museum-goers are sometimes unnerved by the sensation that the past is not entirely confined to frames or display cases. Certain exhibits seem to carry more activity than others. The museum's collections related to Chicago's Great Fire of 1871, for example, are particularly associated with reports of strange phenomena. Staff and visitors describe a sudden drop in temperature when approaching these displays, the unmistakable feeling of a presence behind them, or a sense of tension that seems to cling to the very air. The intensity of these experiences has led some to theorize that traumatic events leave a residue of energy, a lingering imprint of emotions and life force unable to fully move on. Late-night staff often tell stories of doors opening and closing on their own, lights flickering in empty hallways, and occasionally, items shifting slightly when no one is nearby. In some instances, archival drawers have been reported slightly ajar, though only recently checked and locked. While mundane explanations, such as drafts or electrical malfunctions exist, the frequency and consistency of these events point to a deeper, unexplained presence rooted in the museum's history. Paranormal investigators who have visited the Chicago History Museum have recorded EMF spikes, unexplained noises on audio devices, and fleeting shadows on cameras. Even in highly controlled conditions, anomalies persist, suggesting that the spirits indeed exist, are aware of human observation, but not constrained by it. Some investigators posit that the museum, with its collection of personal artifacts, letters, and photographs, acts as a kind of energy reservoir, drawing on the emotions and memories of those who lived through the events now preserved within its walls. The sense of history lingering beyond the physical exhibits seems particularly pronounced in rooms containing personal belongings, such as old clothing, manuscripts, and photographs of Chicago residents from previous centuries. Patrons have described a cold draft sweeping past them unexpectedly, or a sudden feeling of dread that compels them to move on. Others claim that in the quietest moments, they can almost hear faint footsteps or murmured conversations in languages or accents long absent from the modern cityscape. Despite or perhaps because of these unsettling reports, the Chicago History Museum remains a place of fascination for those drawn to the unknown. The spirits, if they are indeed present, appear to coexist with the living in a subtle yet persistent way, reminding visitors that history is more than dates and artifacts. It is composed of the lives, emotions, and energies of those who came before. For employees, researchers, and visitors alike, the experience of being in the museum after hours is a delicate balance of awe and unease. The echoes of past residents and historians, the whispers from unseen sources, and the occasional touch or shadow serve as a reminder that Chicago's history is alive in ways that defy rational explanation. Each hallway, gallery, and archive holds traces of stories left untold, of lives lived and lost, and perhaps of souls that continue their work long after the physical world has moved on. Those who enter the Chicago History Museum late at night should be prepared for more than just historical exhibits. Beyond the glass cases and framed photographs lies a world where echoes of the past persist, where unseen watchers roam, and where the city's history is not merely recorded, but remembered, sometimes in whispers, sometimes in shadows, and sometimes in ways that chill the very spine of the living. The Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago is widely celebrated for its immersive exhibits and interactive displays, drawing visitors from across the country to explore science, technology, and innovation. Yet, behind the bright lights and bustling daytime crowds lies a quieter, more unsettling world. After the doors close and the halls empty, the museum seems to take on a life of its own, a place where the past lingers in ways that cannot be fully explained. Late-night staff are often the first to encounter the museum's strange occurrences. Security personnel working evening shifts report hearing voices, discussing experiments or scientific procedures in areas long since abandoned. These voices are sometimes distinct, other times faint murmurs, yet they seem to carry purpose and intent. Some employees have claimed that when they follow the sounds, they find empty rooms, display cases, or corridors where no one should be present. The inexplicable chatter seems to originate from the very walls, as if echoes of past scientists or inventors are replaying their work over and over, trapped in the confines of the building. One of the most frequently cited locations for paranormal activity is the submarine exhibit. Visitors exploring the Mach U-505 submarine, a preserved World War II vessel, have described a sensation of being followed or watched, despite the submarine being completely empty. Many have reported hearing footsteps echoing inside the metallic hull, moving toward them, yet disappearing when they attempt to trace the source. Staff members confirm that the acoustics are highly precise and should not allow such distortions to occur naturally, leading many to wonder if the spirits of sailors or workers are somehow lingering in the vessel. In addition to auditory phenomena, visual anomalies have been reported throughout the museum. Employees late at night have seen shadowy figures peering through glass displays or moving across hallways where no one else is present. Some figures appear to wear vintage clothing, perhaps echoing the era of the museum's early exhibits, or even the periods when the artifacts were actively used. Observers describe the shadows as fleeting, vanishing the moment they focus on them, yet leaving behind a lingering sense of unease, as though the figure's gaze remains fixed even after it disappears. The museum's vintage machinery section is particularly prone to reports of inexplicable movement and sounds. Displayed engines, gears, and other mechanical devices sometimes emit sudden clanks, creaks, or low hums despite being inactive. Staff recount instances of levers shifting or wheels turning with no physical intervention, accompanied by the faint smell of oil and metal, as if a long-departed engineer is tinkering with the mechanisms in the afterlife. These occurrences are unpredictable, often coinciding with nights when few people are present, amplifying the eerie sensation that the museum itself remembers its own history. The building's vast spaces amplify the sensation of unseen presences. Halls lined with large scientific installations echo even the smallest noises, and when a door closes unexpectedly or a shadow flickers at the edge of perception, the experience can be profoundly disorienting. Employees report a feeling of being watched or followed through the corridors, sometimes accompanied by sudden temperature drops, chills, or an inexplicable heaviness in the air. These sensations often focus on exhibits related to historical experiments, submarines, or large machinery, as if the memories and energies of those who once worked with or studied these devices remain tied to them. Paranormal investigators who have visited the Museum of Science and Industry have documented a variety of anomalies: EMF spikes, unexplained audio recordings, and visual distortions on cameras suggest the presence of something beyond normal explanation. Many of these investigators speculate that the museum, housing both historical and scientific artifacts, may act as a repository for residual energy echoes of human thought, work, and passion that persist beyond death. Each artifact, especially those tied to intense labor or creative effort, seems to carry a fragment of its past, replaying the energy of those who once touched or operated it. Even visitors during regular hours sometimes sense an uncanny atmosphere near certain exhibits. Some report an odd feeling of being observed while interacting with the displays, or a sudden, inexplicable chill when approaching older machinery. While the museum is undoubtedly busy and full of noise during the day, these subtle hints of activity suggest that the building retains a consciousness of sorts, a memory of those who walked its halls long before the present generation. Staff members recount occasional physical manifestations, subtle but unnerving. Items have been found shifted from their displays, doors left slightly ajar when previously locked, and the faint impression of someone brushing past in narrow passageways. While these events could have mundane explanations, the consistency and pattern across decades of museum operations point to a lingering presence that cannot easily be dismissed. Ultimately, the Museum of Science and Industry serves as both a beacon of human achievement and a stage for the unexplained. The juxtaposition of innovation, historical artifacts, and paranormal activity creates a unique environment where curiosity is rewarded not just with knowledge, but with an eerie glimpse into the unknown. Those who spend long hours among the exhibits, particularly after closing time, often leave with the sense that the museum's history is alive, not merely as static displays, but as active lingering energies that watch, whisper, and move among the machinery. Visitors and staff alike are drawn into this uncanny coexistence of science and the supernatural. The voices, shadows, footsteps, and mechanical sounds serve as reminders that human effort and history can leave a lasting imprint, a residue that refuses to fade even as decades pass. For those willing to explore beyond the surface, the Museum of Science and Industry is more than a collection of exhibits. It is a living archive of both human ingenuity and the inexplicable, a place where the past, present, and perhaps even the spirits of those long gone coexists in ways that defy understanding. The Deuceable Museum of African American History in Chicago stands as a monumental tribute to the achievements, struggles, and rich culture of African Americans. Visitors flock to explore its extensive collections, from historical documents and artifacts to artwork and cultural exhibits. Yet beyond the educational and inspirational atmosphere, there exists a quieter, unsettling layer one that speaks to a past not entirely at rest. Staff members working late in the museum are often the first to notice signs of unexplained activity. Footsteps echo through the halls when no one else is present, sometimes pacing slowly, sometimes running with sudden urgency. These sounds are described as distinct and purposeful, as if someone is moving deliberately between exhibits, retracing steps from a time long before the museum existed. In certain corridors, whispers drift across empty galleries. Visitors who happen to linger near older collections have reported hearing voices, faint and fragmented, speaking in languages or phrases that seem out of place. Some interpret these as echoes of the past. Perhaps the spirits of those whose stories and struggles are now preserved within the museum walls. Objects have also been known to shift mysteriously. Books are sometimes found open to pages they were not placed on. Papers have been discovered, moved, or slightly crumpled. And small artifacts occasionally appear slightly askew in their displays. While the museum is busy during the day, these occurrences are most often reported after closing, when the building is largely empty. Employees describe a tangible weight in the air near certain exhibits, a pressure that seems to follow them through hallways, thickening near displays dedicated to particularly turbulent or emotional periods of African American history. Certain exhibits seem to attract more attention than others. Displays relating to slavery, civil rights struggles, and moments of profound injustice often feel charged with an energy that is difficult to ignore. Staff have recounted instances where the temperature drops suddenly near these sections, or where a soft, almost imperceptible vibration can be felt beneath their feet. Some visitors, unaware of the museum's late-night activity, have remarked on the sensation of being watched or guided while examining these exhibits. This sense of presence is subtle yet pervasive, leaving an impression that the past itself is asserting influence over the present. Late-night tours, maintenance sessions, or security patrols are often punctuated by unexplained auditory phenomena. Faint knocks, soft sighs, and whispered phrases can be heard around corners or behind closed doors. These sounds rarely repeat in the same pattern, giving the impression of randomness while still being unmistakably directed. Security personnel report pausing to listen as the noises ebb and flow, feeling a strange rhythm to them, as though the building itself is alive with memory. Visual anomalies have also been reported, though they are less frequent and often fleeting. Staff have glimpsed shadows moving out of the corner of their eyes, vanishing when looked at directly. Occasionally, the movement of light or reflections within display cases seems unnatural, as if something unseen is interacting with the exhibits. One late-night janitor described a brief silhouette standing near a collection of early 20th century photographs, only for it to dissolve into the darkness when approached. Witnesses consistently report a sense of solemnity rather than malevolence, a quiet presence, perhaps protective, observing, and ensuring that the stories of the past are not forgotten. Paranormal investigators who have visited the Dusable Museum have recorded electromagnetic anomalies, unexplained temperature fluctuations, and audio phenomena that do not correlate with environmental causes. EVP sessions occasionally capture faint murmurs and fragmented words, hinting at lives and voices long gone. Some theorists suggest that the intensity of the emotional history preserved in the museum's centuries of struggle, hope, and resilience has left residual energy, lingering as a subtle but tangible echo that cannot be ignored. Visitors in the daytime, though often unaware of the paranormal dimension, sometimes experience fleeting unease, a subtle weight or chill near certain exhibits. Some describe a sensation of being guided along a path or compelled to focus on particular artifacts or documents. While these experiences are generally subtle, they mirror the reports of staff and reinforce the idea that the museum's energy is persistent and attentive, interacting with those who take the time to truly observe. The Dusable Museum stands as a repository not only of artifacts and historical records, but also of memory, of human effort, suffering, and triumph. The spirits that are said to linger within its walls are not malicious. Rather, they appear to reflect the gravity of the stories preserved here. Whether one interprets these occurrences as supernatural or as a natural response to a place steeped in profound human history, the effect is undeniable. The museum's late-night ambience carries an aura of presence, a quiet reminder that history is never entirely gone. Ultimately, the Dusable Museum of African American History is more than a museum. It is a living testament to those who came before. The unexplained footsteps, whispers, shadows, and subtle movements that staff and visitors report serve as a reminder that history leaves a mark. For those who encounter these phenomena, the experience can be both unsettling and humbling, reinforcing the connection between past and present. In its quiet hours, the museum becomes a space where the stories of resilience, struggle, and hope are not merely displayed, they are felt, resonating through time and reminding the living that the past continues to watch over them. The Chicago Cultural Center, an architectural gem renowned for its ornate ceilings, grand staircases, and magnificent stained glass windows, is not only a hub for art, music, and civic events, it is also a building shrouded in stories of the unexplained. While tourists and locals alike admire its historic beauty by day, the center takes on a different, more mysterious character after hours. Staff members and after-hours visitors have reported experiences that suggest the presence of something beyond the natural world, giving the cultural center a reputation as one of Chicago's quietly haunted locations. Many of the reports originate from the upper floors, where ornate hallways and expansive rooms create long echoes and shifting shadows. Employees working late into the evening often describe hearing voices when no one else is present. These disembodied sounds range from faint whispers to more distinct murmurs, sometimes appearing to move with a direction, as if invisible figures are walking along the corridors. Some have claimed that the voices resemble conversations from decades past, faint remnants of people who once worked or visited the building during its earliest years. The stained glass hallways, already imbued with an ethereal quality from the colored light filtering through intricate panes, seem to amplify the sense of the uncanny. Visitors and staff have reported seeing shadowy forms flit between the beams of sunlight or artificial lighting, vanishing when approached. The movement of these shadows is often described as purposeful, almost like they are navigating the hallways with intention rather than being random flickers of light or imagination. Some witnesses have compared these forms to the silhouettes of long-gone patrons or employees dressed in period attire that reflects the building's historic eras. Several staff members recount moments when entire rooms felt charged with a sudden, inexplicable energy. Lights have been known to flicker or dim, not in a pattern consistent with electrical issues, and objects such as chairs or small display items occasionally appear slightly out of place. In certain areas, a cold draft is often reported, sending chills down the spine even during the warmest summer evenings. This phenomenon seems concentrated around the upper floors and hallways, near the grand staircases, areas that historically were spaces of gatherings, lectures, or offices for cultural administrators. Security personnel and custodial staff are among the most frequent witnesses to these occurrences, as their shifts often extend beyond the museum-like operating hours. One guard described walking through the hallways late at night, only to hear the unmistakable sound of high heels clicking on the polished floors. Following the noise, they found the corridor empty, and the sound would abruptly vanish. Others report the sensation of being watched while alone, with an almost tangible presence lingering near them before receding silently. These experiences, though unnerving, are usually described as non-threatening, as though the spirits are observers rather than intruders. The grand staircases and performance spaces also have their share of eerie stories. Some musicians and performers rehearsing after hours have spoken of hearing soft applause or the scraping of chairs across floors where no one else is present. Others have noticed a distinct, fleeting scent of perfumes or colognes, unusual in an otherwise empty environment, that vanish as quickly as they appear. Paranormal enthusiasts visiting the cultural center have recorded electromagnetic fluctuations and occasional orbs of light in photographs and video recordings, lending some credence to the claims of spectral activity within these historic walls. Visitors entering the cultural center during public hours occasionally pick up on subtler hints of its haunted reputation. Certain corridors feel unusually quiet, with a heavy, almost contemplative atmosphere, while the interplay of colored sunlight through the stained glass can make shadows appear to move independently. Some guests report fleeting glimpses of figures at the edge of their vision, vanishing the instant they attempt to focus on them. Even the acoustics of the building's long hallways and high ceilings can make ordinary noises seem otherworldly, blending with the inexplicable to create a feeling that the past is still very much present. Accounts of these phenomena have persisted for decades, with stories passed down among staff and security teams. While the cultural center continues to operate as a vibrant hub for art, exhibitions, and performances, the presence of these ghostly occurrences adds a layer of historical mystery. It is as if the building itself is alive with memory, holding on to the echoes of those who once worked, visited, or walked its ornate halls, unwilling to let them fade entirely from the present. Visitors and employees alike often describe a mixture of awe and unease when confronted with the unexplained. Unlike malevolent hauntings, the experiences at the Chicago Cultural Center are generally subtle, contemplative, and sometimes even comforting. Some witnesses interpret the presence of these spirits as guardians of history, ensuring that the stories, artistry, and legacy embedded within the walls are not forgotten. Others see it as a reminder that space is rich in human activity, filled with joy, work, and cultural significance, retain traces of that life long after those people have passed. Ultimately, the Chicago Cultural Center is a place where history, art, and the unexplained intersect. The reports of shadowy figures, whispered conversations, sudden cold drafts, and flickering lights reveal a building alive not just with cultural significance, but also with the lingering energy of the past. Those who experience these phenomena leave with a sense of wonder, a subtle fear, and an appreciation for the unseen layers of history embedded in every polished hallway, every stained glass window, and every ornate ceiling. Here, the past never truly sleeps. It watches, moves, and whispers through the night, reminding all who enter that some stories refuse to fade. The Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago, celebrated for its striking, modern installations and bold avant-garde artworks, is also quietly known among staff and late-night visitors for an entirely different type of exhibit, the unexplained. While the public marvels at the thought-provoking pieces during the day, the museum after hours takes on an entirely different atmosphere, one that is steeped in subtle but persistent paranormal activity. Employees, security personnel, and occasional researchers working late have reported a range of experiences that suggest the building itself may be haunted by invisible presences. One of the most common phenomena reported involves cold spots appearing suddenly and without any logical explanation. Staff members recount walking through empty galleries only to feel a sharp, chilling draft envelop them. Even in areas where the heating system is functioning normally, these cold patches are often accompanied by a creeping sensation of being watched, a feeling that someone or something is standing directly behind them. Turning around reveals nothing but the polished floors, modern art pieces, and the soft glow of security lights. Despite the initial shock, many employees report a strange sense of curiosity that compels them to continue their rounds, though the feeling never truly fades. Several staff members have shared accounts of experiencing the inexplicable movement of artwork and installations. Pieces that were carefully arranged in the late afternoon are sometimes found subtly shifted the next morning. Small sculptures might be angled differently, or the placement of lightweight installations may seem slightly altered. While the museum operates under strict security and monitoring, these movements occur without any recorded human presence, leaving witnesses to wonder whether the spirits themselves are interacting with the exhibits. Some employees speculate that these subtle shifts are attempts at communication, or perhaps a desire for acknowledgement from the living. In addition to cold spots and moving objects, multiple witnesses have reported hearing footsteps echoing through the galleries when the museum is completely empty. The sounds are often soft at first, distant like someone pacing slowly along polished floors, but they can intensify, filling larger spaces with the impression of multiple footsteps moving in tandem. These sounds are particularly prevalent in the museum's long, angular corridors, where acoustics amplify even the faintest noises. Security personnel on late-night patrols frequently describe the footsteps vanishing as suddenly as they begin, leaving only silence in their wake. Occasionally, these sounds are accompanied by the faint rustle of clothing or whispered murmurs, too indistinct to understand, yet unmistakably human in tone. Witnesses also report fleeting, shadowy figures appearing at the periphery of their vision. These forms are often described as vague, almost translucent silhouettes that seem to float rather than walk. Some appear to mimic human gestures, such as turning toward an artwork or leaning over a display, before vanishing entirely when approached. Unlike traditional ghost stories, these sightings are rarely malevolent. Instead, they carry an air of curiosity, as if the spirits are observing the contemporary art in the same way visitors do during daytime hours. The museum's expansive, open spaces also seem to amplify sensory anomalies. Employees have recounted the sudden scent of perfumes or colognes that linger momentarily before dissipating. Occasionally, the faint hum of machinery, like that of an old air conditioning system or an industrial fan, can be heard in areas where none exists. Lights have been known to flicker in isolated sections, creating brief but noticeable variations in the illumination of galleries, even when checked against electrical systems. While these occurrences may seem minor individually, when combined, they create an atmosphere that is palpable and, for some, deeply unsettling. Some of the more intriguing reports center around interactive or kinetic installations. Staff have observed kinetic sculptures that appear to move independently, even when no mechanical or environmental reason explains the motion. Art pieces that rely on balance or subtle adjustments have been found repositioned in ways that defy gravity or logic. These unusual interactions suggest a presence engaging with the art on a level beyond mere observation, perhaps even expressing an appreciation or response to the work displayed. Visitors during opening hours sometimes perceive subtler signs of the museum's haunted nature. While these moments may be fleeting, such as catching a shadow in the corner of an otherwise empty gallery or hearing a whisper when no one else is nearby, they are nonetheless unsettling. Guests occasionally report the inexplicable sensation of being followed as they walk from one exhibit to the next. Some describe the feeling as gentle, almost like a guiding presence, while others find it disconcerting, as though they are being silently observed. Over time, the reports have become a mixture of lore and fact among the museum's staff. Security personnel, curators, and janitorial teams often share stories during breaks, exchanging theories about the unexplained occurrences. Some believe the museum's collection, with its focus on contemporary and often emotionally charged pieces, acts as a magnet for residual energies or spirits. Others suggest that the building itself, constructed on a site with its own long history, may carry echoes of previous events that manifest in these ghostly interactions. Paranormal investigators who have visited the Museum of Contemporary Art have noted electromagnetic fluctuations in areas where cold spots are reported. Occasional orbs of light appear in photographs taken during late-night inspections, and faint recordings capture sounds indistinguishable from human voices, providing a measure of validation to the claims of those who have experienced the unexplained. While skeptics may attribute these phenomena to the building's design, temperature variations, or natural acoustics, the consistency of experiences reported over time has given the museum a reputation as a site of persistent supernatural activity. In the end, the Museum of Contemporary Art offers more than just avant-garde art. Beyond the exhibits, the hallways, galleries, and quiet spaces after hours are imbued with stories of invisible visitors, lingering presences, and unexplained phenomena. Whether one interprets these experiences as hauntings, residual energies, or simply the mind's reaction to modern spaces at night, they remain compelling and chilling. Staff, security personnel, and some visitors agree that the building feels alive in ways that transcend the physical, its walls echoing with memories, curiosities, and perhaps even the spirits of those who refuse to leave. In the Museum of Contemporary Art, the past, present, and the unseen converge, leaving an indelible impression on all who traverse its mysterious and sometimes unsettling spaces. The Oriental Institute Museum in Chicago, home to one of the most extensive collections of ancient, Near Eastern artifacts in the world, is not only a haven for historians and archaeologists, it is also a place steeped in whispers of the unexplained. By day, visitors marvel at the intricate carvings, clay tablets, and monumental sculptures from civilizations that flourished thousands of years ago. By night, however, the museum takes on a different, far more unsettling atmosphere, one in which the echoes of the past seem to reach out across the centuries. Staff members who work late into the evening have frequently reported experiencing sudden drops in temperature, even in areas where the heating system operates normally. These cold spots often occur near significant or sacred-looking artifacts, the statues of deities, ritual vessels, or intricately carved stelae. Security personnel walking through the Egyptian and Mesopotamian galleries describe an almost tangible sense of being watched. The sensation is subtle at first, prickling on the back of the neck, a feeling that someone is just beyond the edge of vision, but it intensifies the deeper one ventures into the exhibit halls. Apparitions have been reported on multiple occasions. Some visitors claim to see shadowy figures in traditional priestly attire, moving silently among the artifacts, as if performing ancient rites that time itself has forgotten. These figures often appear partially transparent, flickering at the periphery of vision before vanishing when approached. Witnesses describe their movements as deliberate yet eerily calm, gliding along the stone floors and pausing at specific displays before continuing their silent journey. Many of these encounters have been reported in the evening hours, when the museum is largely empty, suggesting that the spirits may feel free to manifest when the noise and activity of the daytime crowd dissipates. Perhaps the most unsettling experiences involve auditory phenomena. Some staff and nighttime visitors have reported hearing distant chants, low-toned hums, or what sounds like ritual incantations echoing faintly through the halls. The sounds are often described as resonant and rhythmic, reminiscent of ceremonial rites performed in ancient temples. These auditory experiences are usually intermittent, sometimes lasting only a few seconds, but they are vivid enough to leave a lingering sense of awe and unease. In some cases, security cameras have captured anomalies, faint shadows moving across hallways where no one was present at the time, or brief flashes of light that appear in the recorded footage without any identifiable source. The museum's vast collection of Mesopotamian tablets has also been linked to unusual experiences. Employees working late in the library or research rooms, where these artifacts are studied, have reported a feeling of presence, as though unseen eyes are scanning the documents. Some have even claimed that the clay tablets themselves seem to hum faintly when handled, as if resonating with energy that transcends the physical object. Though these sensations are difficult to quantify, they are consistent enough to have become part of the museum's unofficial lore. Visitors who remain after hours during special tours have occasionally shared unsettling experiences. Lights seem to flicker around particularly ancient or sacred-looking pieces, and reflections in the glass display cases sometimes appear distorted, showing shapes or figures not present in the room. Some guests report a subtle pressure against their shoulders or a feeling of guidance along certain paths, leading them to stops within the galleries that contain artifacts linked to powerful ritual or ceremonial significance. Others recount feeling an almost magnetic pull toward specific displays, as though the artifacts themselves are demanding attention. Even the architecture of the museum seems to contribute to its eerie atmosphere. The high ceilings, wide archways, and echoing corridors create perfect conditions for faint noises to carry, amplifying whispers, footsteps, or other subtle sounds. Curators and staff note that in many cases, the timing of these occurrences coincides with quieter periods of the night, enhancing the perception of supernatural presence. The combination of the artifact's historical weight, the hushed museum environment, and the sheer passage of time seems to create a space where the past is never truly silent. Some paranormal investigators who have visited the Oriental Institute Museum report electromagnetic anomalies in several galleries, particularly near the Egyptian and Mesopotamian exhibits. Cameras sometimes capture orbs of light or transient shadows, and EVP, electronic voice phenomenon recordings, have picked up low, indistinct murmurs when the rooms were otherwise empty, while skeptics suggest explanations such as temperature fluctuations, acoustics, or reflections. The consistency and specificity of the reports have contributed to the museum's reputation as a site of lingering supernatural energy. In addition to staff and investigators, even researchers who work in close proximity to the artifacts describe moments of inexplicable tension or awareness. Many note that certain objects, such as ceremonial masks, funerary figurines, or intricately carved stela seem to draw attention in a way that feels alive. The energy of centuries-old rituals, the devotion of ancient worshippers, and the mystery of long-lost civilizations all seem to converge within the museum's halls, leaving both tangible and intangible impressions on those present. Whether it is shadowy priests silently walking among the exhibits, whispers that echo from nowhere, or sudden cold drafts that seem to follow individuals through the galleries, the Oriental Institute Museum offers more than a glimpse into ancient history. Its artifacts and architecture create a bridge to a past filled with ceremony, devotion, and mystery, one that occasionally manifests in ways that challenge our understanding of the world. Visitors, staff, and researchers alike come to appreciate the museum not only for its historical treasures but also for the subtle, chilling encounters that serve as a reminder that some echoes of the past never truly fade, lingering quietly in the corners ready to be witnessed by those who dare to remain after dark. The National Museum of Mexican Art, located in the heart of Chicago's Pilsen neighborhood, is celebrated for its vibrant displays of Mexican culture, from intricate folk art to powerful historical exhibits. By day, it is a place of education and wonder, drawing visitors from around the city and beyond. But when the museum empties and the lights dim, a different atmosphere takes hold, one steeped in the echoes of the past and the lingering presence of spirits tied to the rich history of Mexico. Staff who work late into the evening have frequently reported experiencing strange and unsettling phenomena in the older sections of the museum, where historical artifacts and folk art pieces are displayed. Lights often flicker without explanation, plunging hallways into brief, disorienting darkness before returning to normal. The flickers are irregular, sometimes affecting only a single lamp or display case, and often coincide with sudden drops in temperature, leaving employees shivering despite the building's climate controls. Unseen footsteps are another common occurrence. Security personnel and curators walking through empty galleries frequently report the sensation of someone following them, with the sound of soft, deliberate steps echoing off the walls. The footsteps often seem to come from directly behind, only to vanish when staff turn around, leaving nothing but silence and an eerie sense of being watched. Some employees have even described moments where shadows dart across the walls, moving too quickly to belong to any human visitor, vanishing before they can be fully observed. Certain exhibits appear to be epicenters of activity. Artifacts depicting historical Mexican spirits, traditional folk figures, and representations of Dia de los Muertos ceremonies seem to attract attention from unseen forces. Visitors have reported a faint whispering near these displays, as though the voices of those represented in the art are attempting to communicate. At times, soft murmurs can be heard speaking in Spanish, often phrases that are fragmented, ancient, or difficult to decipher. The whispers create an unsettling ambience, particularly when echoing through otherwise silent rooms. Some of the museum's more traditional folk art pieces are also linked to peculiar occurrences. Small figures, ceremonial masks, and handcrafted dolls have been reported to change positions overnight, appearing slightly turned or facing a different direction than when last observed. In one case, a staff member noted that a miniature skeleton used in a Day of the Dead display had been found on the floor, even though it had been securely fastened the previous evening. These incidents suggest that some energy lingers around the objects, seemingly interacting with the living environment of the museum in subtle yet persistent ways. Visitors during evening hours sometimes sense an invisible presence guiding them along the hallways. Some have felt a gentle pressure on their shoulders or the back of their necks, urging them toward certain displays. Others report a feeling of being gently watched, especially when near exhibits that honor historical figures or cultural spirits. In many cases, the experiences are fleeting, leaving a lingering sense of both awe and unease, as though the museum itself is alive with the memories it preserves. Paranormal investigators who have entered the museum during off hours have recorded a range of anomalies. EMF readings often spike in the older galleries, particularly near artifacts associated with ritual or spiritual significance. Motion-sensitive cameras sometimes capture flickering shadows or orbs of light moving through the rooms. Some recordings pick up faint voices or murmurs that appear to originate from empty corridors, echoing with a clarity that defies conventional explanation. Even those skeptical of the supernatural find these repeated occurrences difficult to ignore. The museum's architecture amplifies its haunting atmosphere. High ceilings, narrow corridors, and the quiet hum of air systems create ideal conditions for subtle noises to resonate, allowing whispers, footsteps, and creaks to carry through the building. The combination of historical artifacts, cultural significance, and the spatial design seems to converge in a way that heightens the perception of unseen presences. The stories of ghostly activity at the National Museum of Mexican Art also tie into broader folklore and spiritual beliefs. Many of the pieces on display represent figures who, according to tradition, act as intermediaries between the living and the dead, or who carry spiritual energy across generations. The museum, intentionally or not, serves as a focal point for these energies, preserving not only the physical art, but also an intangible connection to the spirits, ancestors, and historical events depicted within the exhibits. Staff members often share personal stories of moments when the museum's energy feels particularly strong. Lights flickering, soft whispers, or sudden chills can create an immersive, almost tangible connection to the history and traditions celebrated in the museum. Some employees describe it as a reminder that the past is never truly gone, and that the cultural memory preserved within these walls is alive in unexpected, sometimes unsettling ways. For visitors who choose to explore after hours or participate in late tours, the experience can be both fascinating and unnerving. The combination of historical artifacts, dim lighting, and quiet hallways allows the museum's deeper energy to emerge. Shadowy figures, inexplicable sounds, and the sensation of being watched are reported frequently, creating a haunting ambience that complements the cultural richness of the exhibits. Whether it is the flicker of a light, the soft whisper of a voice in Spanish, or the movement of objects left untouched, the National Museum of Mexican Art demonstrates that the boundaries between the living and the spirits of the past can be thin. Visitors and staff alike are reminded that the art does not exist in isolation. Its history and cultural significance carry with them echoes that occasionally manifest in the physical world, leaving an indelible impression on all who encounter them. In this museum, the past is never truly silent, and the spirits of history linger quietly among the exhibits, waiting to be noticed by those who venture through its halls after dark. The Peggy Noterbert Nature Museum, nestled along the Chicago River, is celebrated for its immersive natural exhibits and the serene beauty of its butterfly pavilion. By day, it is a lively destination filled with families, students, and nature enthusiasts eager to explore the diverse flora and fauna. But as the sun sets and the museum empties, a subtle yet unsettling energy emerges, transforming the space into a realm where the past and present seem to converge in eerie ways. Staff who work late in the museum have repeatedly reported strange experiences that cannot be easily explained. In the butterfly pavilion, where sunlight filters through glass and colorful wings dance among the air, some have heard faint laughter echoing through the empty space. The laughter is soft, almost childlike, carrying a tone of playfulness that seems out of place in the stillness of the late hours. Yet it is often tinged with a sense of melancholy, as though the joy of the past has lingered long after the visitors have departed. Sightings of ghostly figures add to the museum's haunted reputation. Several employees have reported glimpsing the silhouettes of children darting between the exhibits, vanishing when approached. These shapes are fleeting, often seen out of the corner of the eye, leaving only a sense of movement where none should exist. Some witnesses claim that the figures appear to interact with the exhibits, peering closely at displays or seeming to run along the pathways in a silent game of hide and seek. Despite the spectral activity, there is rarely a feeling of malice. Rather, the presence feels curious, playful, and wistfully tied to the museum's history of inspiring young minds. Other areas of the museum are not immune to strange occurrences. In hallways leading to the educational classrooms and behind-the-scenes storage rooms, staff have reported sudden drops in temperature, cold drafts that seem to have no source, and the sensation of being watched. Objects occasionally shift position or fall inexplicably, and some security personnel have captured on video brief flashes of shadows moving across empty corridors. These subtle disturbances create an underlying tension that contrasts with the museum's otherwise calm and naturalistic environment. The museum's architecture and layout may amplify these eerie experiences. Glass walls, reflective surfaces, and high ceilings allow light and sound to behave unpredictably, creating conditions where shadows stretch, echo, and sometimes appear to take on a life of their own. In the dim lighting of the evening, every movement seems amplified, every sound carries further, and the boundaries between reality and the spectral impressions become blurred. Paranormal investigators who have visited the Peggy Noterbert Nature Museum after hours have recorded various anomalies. EMF meters often spike in areas where staff report sightings or sensations. Audio recordings sometimes capture soft, unintelligible whispers or muted giggles that are not audible to the human ear at the time of recording. Motion-sensitive cameras occasionally detect figures moving quickly through exhibits, only for these images to vanish upon review. Though not every phenomenon can be conclusively explained, the recurrence of these events over time suggests a lingering presence tied to the museum's history and the countless children who once roamed its halls in excitement and wonder. Folklore surrounding the museum hints at why these energies might persist. The Peggy Noterbert Nature Museum has long been a place where generations of children experience the natural world in an intimate and hands-on way. Some believe that the spirits of those who visited the museum decades ago remain forever drawn to the exhibits they once loved. The Butterfly Pavilion, with its delicate wings and ethereal ambience, seems particularly attuned to these lingering presences, acting almost as a bridge between the living and the spectral memories that reside within the building. Visitors who explore the museum during evening events or after-hours programs occasionally report feeling unusual sensations. Some describe a light brush against their arms, the sudden sound of footsteps in a deserted area, or the inexplicable sense that someone is following them along the quiet pathways. Children's laughter, fleeting shadows, and glimpses of small, playful figures create an atmosphere that is both enchanting and subtly unnerving. These experiences leave a lasting impression, hinting at a hidden layer of the museum that only emerges when the bustle of daytime visitors has passed. Even in the most serene parts of the museum, the natural sounds of the environment take on an uncanny quality. The flutter of butterfly wings, the rustle of leaves in indoor plant displays, and the soft drip of water in terrariums occasionally blend with ghostly echoes, creating moments where the living and spectral seem to intertwine. Staff often describe these moments as simultaneously beautiful and eerie, a reminder that the museum preserves not only the natural world but also the lingering impressions of those who once delighted in it. Despite the eerie undertones, the presence within the Peggy Noterbert Nature Museum is generally considered benign. There is no sense of threat, only a persistent feeling of curiosity, playfulness, and the echoes of memories long past. The spirits, if indeed they exist, seem tied to the joy and wonder the museum has inspired over the years. They are reminders of the human connections formed through exploration, learning, and the simple act of marveling at the natural world. Whether it is a fleeting shadow in the Butterfly Pavilion, a soft echo of laughter, or the inexplicable sensation of being watched in a quiet hallway, the Peggy Noterbert Nature Museum invites those who linger after hours to experience a deeper, more mysterious layer of its environment. The echoes of past visitors, particularly children, serve as a reminder that the museum is not just a collection of exhibits, but a living space where history, memory, and spirit converge. For those who tread carefully and observe closely, the presence of these playful, lingering souls adds a hauntingly beautiful dimension to the museum, forever intertwining the wonder of nature with the mysteries of the unseen world. The Chicago Children's Museum, a vibrant and bustling space by day, is dedicated to sparking creativity and curiosity in young minds. Its colorful exhibits, interactive play areas, and hands-on learning stations make it a favorite destination for families. However, when the crowds leave and night falls, a different energy seems to awaken within the museum's walls. Staff working late have reported a range of inexplicable occurrences, hinting at a lingering presence that refuses to rest. Several employees have recounted witnessing toys moving on their own. Small blocks, figurines, and even plush dolls have been seen sliding across tables, rolling along the floor, or appearing in places where they were never left. These movements are often subtle, just enough to catch the corner of one's eye, yet undeniably deliberate, as though the objects are being manipulated by unseen hands. The phenomenon seems particularly concentrated near older exhibit stores that have been part of the museum for decades and have entertained countless children over the years. Along with the moving toys, many staff members have reported hearing disembodied sounds of children's laughter echoing through the empty rooms. The laughter is usually soft, playful, and fleeting, vanishing when one turns to investigate. Sometimes it is accompanied by the sound of running footsteps, light thumps on the carpet, or the creak of furniture shifting, even when the space is completely deserted. These auditory experiences often leave staff with a mixture of unease and a strange sense of wonder, as if the museum's past visitors have chosen to linger long after their playtime ended. Certain areas of the museum are particularly active. The building's older sections, once the primary exhibition spaces decades ago, seem to resonate with the most unexplained activity. Staff have reported cold spots that appear suddenly, doors opening and closing without contact, and the occasional glimpse of shadowy figures moving quickly along hallways. These figures are rarely fully visible, often glimpsed out of the corner of the eye, or as vague shapes that vanish the moment they are noticed. Visitors who have attended special after-hours events occasionally report feeling a subtle presence behind them, or seeing toys that were previously arranged in neat rows, now scattered as if by invisible children at play. Paranormal investigators, who have been invited to the museum after hours, have recorded unusual phenomena. EMF meters spike in certain exhibits, particularly those featuring older, well-loved toys. Audio recordings sometimes capture faint giggling, murmurs, or whispered words that were not audible during live observation. Motion-sensitive cameras occasionally detect movement in spaces that should be completely empty. While skeptics often attribute these occurrences to environmental factors or human error, the consistency and repetition of reports across multiple years suggest a more persistent, enigmatic presence. Folklore surrounding the museum provides some context for these experiences. The Chicago Children's Museum has been a hub of playful activity since its opening, welcoming generations of children who left countless impressions of joy, curiosity, and imagination. Some believe that these energetic spirits have left behind residual energy, bound to the exhibits they loved and the spaces where they spent hours exploring. The museum's interactive nature, hands-on activities, movable objects, and immersive play may make it particularly susceptible to such lingering energies, allowing echoes of the past to manifest in tangible ways. Visitors and staff alike have described moments when the boundaries between the living and the spectral feel particularly thin. A staff member arranging toys in the evening might suddenly notice them subtly rearranged, or feel the sensation of being watched by small, unseen eyes. A sound of laughter or faint chatter may drift down a hallway, prompting a careful look, only to reveal empty rooms. In these moments, the museum seems alive in an unexpected sense, animated by echoes of past joy and a lingering curiosity that defies ordinary explanation. While the activity can be unnerving, there is rarely a sense of threat. The presence within the Chicago Children's Museum appears playful and curious rather than malicious. Toys move, shadows flit, and laughter rings out, but there is no indication of harmful intent. For staff who have grown accustomed to the after-hours phenomena, the experience is often described as surreal and bittersweet, a reminder of the energy and vitality that children have historically brought to the space. Even during normal operating hours, visitors sometimes report small, subtle occurrences. A toy might appear out of place for no discernible reason, or a faint giggle might be heard in a quiet corner of the museum. While these incidents are rare and easily dismissed in the hustle of daytime activity, they hint at a persistent undercurrent of residual energy that continues to influence the space. The Chicago Children's Museum offers a unique experience for those who remain after hours, blending the warmth of human creativity with the subtle eeriness of lingering spirits. For those attentive enough to notice, the museum becomes a place where joy and curiosity from generations past converge with the present, leaving behind echoes of playful energy that manifest in fleeting but tangible ways. Whether it is the gentle rearrangement of toys, the sound of laughter in an empty room, or the fleeting glimpse of a shadowy figure, the museum's haunted side provides a glimpse into the invisible lives of those who once filled its halls with wonder, forever intertwining the living experience of learning with the mysterious persistence of the unseen. The Swedish-American Museum in Chicago stands as a proud monument to the perseverance, culture, and traditions of Swedish immigrants who made their way to America. Within its walls are countless artifacts, photographs, clothing, furniture, letters, and tools, each carrying the stories of men, women, and children who crossed oceans in search of a better life. By day, the museum is a bright, welcoming place where history feels alive in the most educational of ways. But when the lights dim and the halls empty, that feeling of life takes on another meaning altogether. Late-night staff and visitors who have been inside after hours speak of an atmosphere that grows increasingly heavy as the building settles into silence. The creaks and groans of the old structure might explain some of the sounds, yet there are reports that defy simple explanation. Footsteps echoing across wooden floors have been heard when no one else is present. They are often described as deliberate, steady, and unnervingly human. Sometimes they follow behind staff as they move through the galleries, as though someone is keeping pace just out of sight. At other times, the footsteps come from locked rooms or sealed-off areas, filling the air with a sense of unease. Cold drafts are another frequent occurrence. Staff members have felt sudden chills rush past them in otherwise warm spaces, the kind of icy breeze that seems to cut directly through the skin. These drafts are most often reported near the exhibits dedicated to early immigrant life, reconstructed rooms filled with authentic artifacts from Sweden and the homes of those who made the journey to America. It is as if the energy of those who once endured great hardships has imprinted itself onto the objects and spaces now preserved for display. The shadows, however, are what leave the deepest impression on those who encounter them. Fleeting dark shapes appear in the periphery of vision, darting from corner to corner or lingering briefly before vanishing. Staff who have worked late tell of seeing figures standing silently in gallery doorways or at the edges of display cases, only to disappear the moment they are confronted. Some describe these shapes as vaguely human, their outlines resembling men in old-fashioned coats or women in long dresses, clothing that matches the eras represented in the museum's exhibits. One particular area of note is the collection of personal belongings donated by descendants of Swedish families who settled in the Midwest. There are letters yellowed with age, wooden toys once cherished by children, and tools carried across the Atlantic to carve out a new life in a strange land. It is here, among the most personal relics, that many visitors report the strongest sensations. People have felt as though unseen eyes are watching them read old letters or study photographs. Some even claim to hear faint murmurs in Swedish, words too quiet to fully decipher, yet clear enough to suggest the presence of voices lingering from the past. A few chilling accounts stand out. One staff member, tasked with locking up late at night, swore she saw the faint outline of a woman standing near an old trunk on display. The figure appeared to be examining the trunk, her posture bent slightly forward. But when the staff member drew closer, the figure dissolved into nothingness. Another time, during a special after-hours event, a guest walking through a gallery felt a firm hand press against his shoulder, guiding him toward the exit. He turned quickly, expecting a fellow guest or staff member, but found himself entirely alone. Electronic equipment has also picked up anomalies. Paranormal investigators invited to explore the museum have reported sudden spikes on EMF meters in specific galleries, particularly those featuring household artifacts. Audio recordings have captured faint but distinct sounds, whispers, the tapping of footsteps, and once even what sounded like a sigh directly into a microphone. Cameras placed overnight have occasionally recorded unexplained movements, small shifts in the positioning of objects, or the appearance of light distortions, almost like orbs floating through the air. Despite these eerie encounters, the energy within the Swedish-American Museum is rarely described as hostile. Most who experience these phenomena believe the spirits connected to the museum are not malevolent, but rather tethered to the objects and memories preserved there. For many Swedish immigrants, these items were not simply possessions, but lifelines, symbols of family, heritage, and survival. It is possible that the strong emotions tied to these objects, hope, fear, love, and loss, continue to ripple through time, manifesting in ways that we interpret as paranormal activity. The museum's location in Chicago also plays a role in its reputation. The city has long been a gathering place for immigrants, and its history is layered with countless stories of hardship, triumph, and tragedy. It is not unusual for places preserving such intense histories to develop an atmosphere charged with residual energy. In this way, the Swedish-American Museum serves not only as a cultural archive, but also as a kind of spiritual one, where the voices of the past continue to find expression. Those who frequent the museum after dark often describe the experience as bittersweet, while the footsteps, shadows, and whispers are undeniably unsettling. There is also a sense of deep connection to the lives once lived. The spirits, if they exist, do not seem to be seeking harm, but rather acknowledgement, a recognition of their journey, their sacrifices, and the legacy they left behind. The Swedish-American Museum is a place where history lives in more ways than one. Its galleries may be filled with artifacts carefully catalogued and displayed, but according to many who have walked its halls in silence, those artifacts carry with them something unseen. Footsteps in the empty corridors, cold drafts that whisper of the past, and fleeting shadows that refuse to fade all suggest that the museum is more than just a building of memory. It is a place where the presence of those who came before still lingers, silently observing, quietly reminding, and perhaps still walking alongside the living who enter its halls. The Polish Museum of America in Chicago is more than just a cultural landmark. It is a place where history and memory linger in ways that defy explanation. Nestled within a building that has stood for over a century, the museum houses artifacts, artworks, manuscripts, and relics that tell the story of Polish heritage in the United States. But while visitors often arrive to learn about the past, many leave with chilling accounts of experiencing it in a much more direct way. Reports of ghostly apparitions, shifting objects, and unexplained whispers have made the museum a point of fascination not only for historians, but also for those interested in the paranormal. The most common stories involve apparitions dressed in period clothing. Visitors wandering through the galleries have claimed to see figures in 19th century attire, often wearing the heavy coats, shawls, or work clothes reminiscent of Polish immigrants from the Old World. These spectral figures are rarely interactive. They drift across the room or stand silently near displays, only to vanish when approached. Some witnesses describe their presence as almost sorrowful, as if they are tied to the objects and stories preserved in the museum, unable to leave behind the hardships of their lives. Whispers are another eerie phenomenon frequently reported within the museum's walls. Both guests and staff have spoken of faint voices that echo through the halls, often in Polish. The words are rarely clear, sometimes just a murmur, but occasionally entire phrases can be distinguished. Those who understand the language have claimed to hear fragments of prayers, laments, or even conversations that sound as though they belong to another century. The source of these whispers is never visible, and they fade the moment someone tries to locate them. The feeling of being watched is perhaps the most unsettling experience, described by staff members. While working late at night, alone among the exhibits, they often sense unseen eyes following them from the shadows. The sensation grows particularly strong near displays dedicated to Polish settlers of the 19th century. These sections of the museum showcase personal belongings, handmade clothing, tools, photographs, and letters. Many speculate that the intimate connection between these objects and their long-deceased owners has created an environment where the past never truly rests. Some staff members even believe that the spirits of these settlers remain close, guarding their stories and legacies within the museum's walls. Adding to the mystery are accounts of objects that appear to move on their own. While no dramatic levitations or crashes have been recorded, small shifts in position are common enough to draw attention. A book once carefully placed on a table is found tilted or open the next morning. A framed photograph is discovered slightly crooked, even though it was straightened the day before. In some cases, chairs in the archives or reading rooms are found pushed out, as though someone had been sitting there long after the building was closed. These subtle movements are unnerving because they suggest activity just beyond human perception. Quiet reminders that the museum may be shared with unseen residents. The building itself contributes to the atmosphere. Its architecture carries echoes of the early 20th century, with creaking floors, dim hallways, and high windows that let in shafts of light by day but create deep shadows by night. Paranormal investigators who have toured the museum often describe the energy inside as heavy, particularly in areas where artifacts from Poland's struggles and wars are displayed. It is not uncommon for electronic equipment to malfunction within the museum, batteries draining unexpectedly or audio recorders capturing strange background noises. Visitors occasionally recount more personal encounters. Some claim to feel a sudden brush of cold air, as though someone walked past them when no one is there. Others describe the sensation of a light touch on the shoulder or arm, almost like a fleeting attempt at contact. These experiences often occur when people spend long periods of time near the historical displays, reading letters or examining photographs. It is as if the spirits, sensing attention, draw closer to those willing to engage with their stories. One particularly chilling story comes from a night security guard who reported seeing a man in old-fashioned clothing standing near a display of Polish military memorabilia. The guard initially thought the man was a straggler left behind after closing hours, but when he approached to escort him out, the figure simply dissolved into the shadows. Shaken, the guard later described the apparition as wearing a soldier's coat from the 19th century, complete with a cap and boots that matched the very uniforms on display. Despite the unsettling atmosphere, there is also a sense of reverence tied to the hauntings of the Polish Museum of America. The spirits that linger here do not seem malevolent. Instead, they appear bound to their heritage, watching over the artifacts that connect them to their homeland and to the generations that followed. For many, the idea that these presences remain is not entirely frightening. It's also a reminder of the enduring bond between people and their history. Still, for those who walk the galleries after dark, the experience can be unnerving. The silence of the museum is often broken by faint whispers, the creak of footsteps that belong to no one, or the flicker of movement just at the edge of vision. Each artifact feels alive with memory, and every shadow seems to hold a figure waiting to emerge. The Polish Museum of America is a place where culture, history, and spirit intersect. By day, it educates visitors about the Polish-American journey. By night, it transforms into something else entirely, a space where the veil between the past and present thins, and where the voices of those who came before may still be heard in the quiet halls. Whether seen as guardians of heritage or restless souls seeking acknowledgement, the presences in the museum ensure that the past is never truly silent. The Jane Addams Whole House Museum in Chicago is not just a monument to social reform and progress, it is also one of the city's most quietly haunted landmarks. Founded in 1889 by Jane Addams and Ellen Gates Starr, Whole House served as a settlement for immigrants, offering support, education, and a sense of community during a time when many were struggling to build new lives in America. Today, the house stands as a museum dedicated to that legacy. Yet beyond its historical importance, there are stories whispered by visitors and staff alike, stories that suggest the energy of the past has never entirely left the building. Walking through Whole House, one is immediately struck by the weight of its history. The creaking floors, dim hallways, and carefully preserved rooms all hold echoes of those who once lived and worked within its walls. Visitors often describe an uncanny sensation of being watched, particularly in the corridors and stairwells. Some speak of muffled voices drifting through empty rooms, as though conversations from the early 20th century continue to play out, trapped within the fabric of the building itself. Many believe the spirit of Jane Addams herself still lingers here. Addams devoted her life to social reform, focusing on improving the lives of the poor, immigrants, women, and children. Some visitors claim they have felt her presence, an invisible but undeniable sense of authority and watchfulness, as if she continues to oversee the mission of Whole House even after death. Late at night, staff have reported hearing what sounds like footsteps moving purposefully through the building, as though Addams is making her rounds. Others recall moments when the air grows suddenly colder in rooms where she once spent time, a sign to them that she is near. But Addams may not be the only spirit to remain. Whole House was once home to countless immigrants, many of whom brought their own stories, struggles, and sorrows into its walls. For some, this place was the last refuge before death, as illness, poverty, and hardship often claimed lives prematurely. Visitors have spoken of fleeting shadows moving in the periphery of their vision, shapes that vanish when looked at directly. There are accounts of strange whispers in foreign language, echoes, perhaps, of the many voices that once filled the house. The museum also has a reputation for an atmosphere that shifts depending on where one is standing. Certain rooms feel warm, welcoming, even peaceful, as if carrying the positive energy of the reforms and progress once nurtured there. Other rooms, however, feel heavier, charged with a lingering sadness or unease. Guests sometimes describe walking into these spaces and immediately feeling as though they've intruded on something private, or as though someone unseen is watching them closely. There are also reports of objects seeming to move slightly on their own. Chairs have been discovered out of place, even when no one recalls moving them. Doors that were securely shut sometimes creak open without explanation, and lights flicker in areas where no electrical issue can be found. While these occurrences might be dismissed as quirks of an old building, the frequency with which they are reported has made them part of Whole House's reputation for paranormal activity. Perhaps the most chilling stories come from those who claim to hear children. The Whole House served many families, and children often spent their days in its nurseries and classrooms. Even now, visitors claim to hear the faint sound of laughter echoing in the halls, or the hurried patter of small footsteps running across the floor. Staff working late have reported toys being found in odd places, as though moved by invisible hands. One longtime employee described locking up one evening when he suddenly heard what he swore were children's voices singing softly from an empty room. When he opened the door, the space was silent and empty, yet the air was cold enough to raise goosebumps on his skin. The house is also connected to darker legends, some of which have persisted in Chicago folklore for over a century. In the early 20th century, rumors spread about a so-called devil baby being housed at Whole House. The story claimed that a child born with grotesque features and supernatural abilities was hidden away by Jane Addams herself. While Addams repeatedly denied the tale, the legend drew crowds of curious onlookers to the house, many of whom insisted the story was true. Even today, some visitors claim they sense a disturbing energy in certain rooms, as though the echoes of those macabre rumors still cling to the space. Another unsettling aspect of Whole House is the basement. Visitors and staff often avoid spending too much time there, citing an oppressive atmosphere. Strange noises, knocks, dragging sounds, and even faint cries are said to come from the darkness below. Those who venture down sometimes describe feeling as though they are not alone, as though someone is lurking just beyond the light. The basement's reputation as a place of concentrated paranormal activity has only grown over the years, reinforcing the belief that Hull House's spirits are not confined to its upper floors. Despite these eerie tales, many see the hauntings of Hull House not as sinister, but as part of its enduring legacy. The presences felt there are often interpreted as guardians of history, spirits who remain bound to the mission that gave their lives meaning. Jane Addams's own spirit, if she does linger, seems less like a restless ghost and more like a caretaker, ensuring that her vision of compassion and reform continues to inspire new generations. Still, the unsettling experiences cannot be denied. The muffled voices, the sudden chills, the sensation of unseen eyes watching these are not easily dismissed. Whether one believes in ghosts or not, the atmosphere of Hull House is undeniably charged with the weight of its past. Every creak of the floorboards, every flicker of shadow, feels infused with memory. The Jane Addams Hull House Museum stands as both a beacon of social progress and a place where history refuses to fade quietly into the past. It is a site where the living and the dead seem to coexist, where the echoes of reformers, immigrants, and children linger in the corridors. For some, visiting the museum is a chance to connect with history. For others, it is an encounter with the inexplicable. And for those who walk its halls at night, Hull House is a reminder that the past is never truly gone. It lingers, whispering, watching, and waiting in the silence. The Lithuanian Museum in Chicago, though modest in size compared to the city's larger institutions, carries a powerful presence that goes beyond its historical artifacts. Dedicated to preserving the culture, traditions, and stories of Lithuanian immigrants, the museum offers a window into a past filled with struggle, perseverance, and resilience. Yet, beyond the informative displays and cultural exhibitions, visitors and staff have reported strange occurrences that suggest the spirits of those who lived through these hardships may never have left. Many accounts center around sudden drops in temperature that appear without warning. Guests walking through the exhibit rooms have described feeling cold drafts brushing past them, even on warm summer days. Some staff members note that these chills are often accompanied by an eerie sensation of being watched, as if invisible eyes are following every movement. The feeling is particularly strong near displays detailing the lives of Lithuanian immigrants who endured harsh conditions in their early years in Chicago. Whispers in Lithuanian are another frequently reported phenomenon. Tourists and researchers alike have recounted hearing faint voices in the language echoing across the rooms. Yet when they turn to look, no one is present. These whispers often seem to come from the corners of the museum or from behind the display cases, giving the impression that the voices are bound to the stories and objects they once interacted with. Some interpreters claim the voices speak in fragmented sentences or phrases about work, family, or the hardships of migration, as if the spirits are reliving the struggles that defined their lives. Shadows moving across the walls are also commonly reported. Visitors frequently glimpse figures out of the corner of their eyes, sometimes tall, sometimes small, moving among the exhibits. When looked at directly, these figures vanish, leaving only the dim light of the room and the quiet rustle of papers or display labels. Certain rooms seem to be more active than others, particularly those showcasing photographs of early immigrant communities or letters documenting lives of hardship, loss, and adaptation. These areas are often described as heavy with energy, as though the museum itself has absorbed the pain and perseverance of the people it honors. Staff members working late hours have reported even more unsettling experiences. Some have heard footsteps pacing slowly across empty floors, or the soft scraping of furniture being shifted. Lights have been known to flicker in isolated exhibit rooms without electrical cause, and occasionally, objects appear slightly out of place in the morning despite being carefully arranged the night before. These incidents, while subtle, contribute to the sense that the museum is alive with a presence that resists human understanding. One particularly persistent tale involves the main hallway, where portraits of Lithuanian community leaders line the walls. Several employees claim that after closing, the faces in these portraits seem to follow movement, their eyes glinting in dim light. In some instances, visitors report hearing hushed conversations, as though the figures are discussing matters of the past, only to find the hall completely empty when they investigate. These experiences have led some to believe that the spirits of these early leaders continue to observe the museum, ensuring the stories of their people are remembered. Visitors have also noted unusual sensations when handling certain artifacts. When standing near old textiles, handwritten letters, or ceremonial objects, a number of people report a sudden weight in the air, a prickling on the skin, or the feeling of invisible fingers brushing past. While some dismiss these sensations as imagination or anxiety, the consistency of these reports suggests something more pervasive, a lingering energy connected to the lives and struggles represented in the museum. Despite these chilling occurrences, many consider the hauntings of the Lithuanian Museum to be more protective than malevolent. The spirits seem tied to the museum's mission, preserving history, culture, and memory. There is a sense that the presence is less about fear and more about vigilance, an ongoing watch over the artifacts, stories, and heritage that define the Lithuanian community in Chicago. Visitors often leave with a heightened awareness of the past, feeling the weight of lives lived long ago, and an odd mixture of reverence and unease. The museum's reputation for paranormal activity has also made it a site of curiosity for ghost hunters and paranormal enthusiasts. Investigations have recorded unexplained cold spots, occasional audio anomalies, and fleeting visual phenomena. Some equipment even registers low-frequency vibrations that cannot be attributed to mechanical causes. While skeptics may attribute these events to building quirks or environmental factors, the sheer volume of similar reports over the years gives the Lithuanian Museum a mystique that cannot easily be dismissed. Ultimately, the Lithuanian Museum stands as a testament to the resilience and hardships of the people it represents. But it is also a place where history refuses to remain silent. The cold drafts, moving shadows, whispered voices, and inexplicable sensations create an atmosphere where the past and present coexist, inviting visitors to experience not just history, but the lingering essence of those who lived it. For those walking its halls, there is a quiet understanding. The stories of struggle, endurance, and cultural identity are alive here, sometimes more alive than one might expect. The museum, both educational and haunted, offers a dual experience. Guests leave with a deeper understanding of Lithuanian heritage, while simultaneously carrying with them the memory of something unseen, something that watches, whispers, and waits within the shadowed corners of Chicago's Lithuanian past. It is a place where history and haunting intertwine, reminding visitors that even in preservation, spirits of the past may never fully rest. The Ukrainian National Museum in Chicago, dedicated to preserving the rich history and cultural heritage of Ukrainian immigrants, has long been a site not only of learning, but also of mysterious, unexplained phenomena. While visitors come to admire its artifacts, traditional costumes, and historical exhibits, many have reported experiences that suggest the spirits of the past linger far beyond the pages of history books. Apparitions are the most frequently reported phenomenon. Guests and staff alike have described seeing faint figures dressed in traditional Ukrainian garb, walking through the hallways, disappearing when approached. Sometimes these figures appear near exhibits detailing life in the old country, performing daily tasks as though frozen in time. Other times, they are seen near artifacts representing the struggles of immigration, standing silently and gazing toward the displayed items with an intensity that feels almost sentient. These ghostly forms are said to vanish into the walls or blend into the dimly lit corridors, leaving those who witness them questioning whether they were seeing history itself come alive. The museum also has a reputation for auditory anomalies. Folk music, the kind traditionally played during Ukrainian celebrations, has been reported to play softly, without any visible source. Visitors describe hearing the faint strains of bandoras, violins, and accordion-like instruments drifting through empty rooms, often when no exhibits are operating. At times, these musical echoes seem to follow a person walking through a gallery, stopping when they pause and continuing when they move onward. For some, it is a haunting yet oddly comforting experience. For others, it can be deeply unsettling, as though the museum itself is whispering tales of the past through melody. Staff members working after hours frequently describe the sensation of being followed. In the quiet, expansive galleries, footsteps echo behind them, yet when they turn to look, the halls are empty. Some have reported feeling a brush of air across their shoulders or an invisible hand lingering near the edges of their vision. These occurrences are particularly strong near sections of the museum dedicated to war, migration, and historical hardship. Artifacts such as old photographs, handwritten letters, and personal belongings from times of strife seem to carry the most concentrated energy, as if the items themselves are vessels for the memories and emotions of those who lived through the turbulent events. Visitors have also noted strange visual effects. In dim lighting, shadows seem to move independently from the exhibits and the positioning of lights. Some report seeing fleeting glimpses of figures in traditional dress reflected in glass display cases, even when the cases are empty. These reflections sometimes appear at angles impossible for a real person to occupy, leading some to conclude that what they are seeing is not physical but spectral. In certain areas, particularly along narrow hallways and stairwells, the shadows are said to grow larger or stretch unnaturally, heightening the sensation of a presence observing or following. One of the most eerie areas of the museum is a section devoted to Ukrainian immigration and wartime experiences. Many of the objects, here documents, household items, and clothing, were brought from homes and families uprooted by conflict. Staff report that the energy in these rooms feels heavier, almost as though the emotions of fear, loss, and resilience remain embedded in the very air. Visitors have reported sudden cold drafts, even on warm days, and the feeling of an unseen pressure as they move from exhibit to exhibit. Occasionally, faint whispering can be heard, speaking in Ukrainian, repeating words that sound like names, please, or fragments of conversation from the past. Some accounts suggest that the spirits within the museum are not malevolent, but rather protective and observant. They appear drawn to people engaging with the exhibits and paying attention to the stories they contain. While the experience can be unnerving, many witnesses interpret these manifestations as the ghosts of ancestors watching over their history, ensuring that the legacy of Ukrainian culture and struggle is remembered. Late-night workers often speak of unusual electrical activity, such as flickering lights or displays, momentarily shutting off without cause. In some cases, electronic equipment used for monitoring exhibits has recorded anomalies, including unexplained drops in temperature or faint audio that cannot be traced to a source. Paranormal investigators who have visited the museum report capturing EVP recordings of distant voices speaking in Ukrainian and detecting energy fluctuations in areas with historical significance. Despite the eerie occurrences, the Ukrainian National Museum remains a beloved cultural hub. Visitors and staff alike approach it with a mixture of reverence and curiosity, aware that the museum is a place where the past refuses to remain silent. The combination of traditional artifacts, historical narratives, and unexplained phenomena creates an atmosphere where learning about history is intertwined with experiencing the lingering presence of those who shaped it. Ultimately, the Ukrainian National Museum is a space where the echoes of ancestry and memory are palpable. The apparitions, whispers, musical echoes, and shadowy figures all serve as reminders that the history housed within these walls is not just written in text and photographs. It is alive in a more spectral form, lingering in the hallways, moving among the exhibits, and occasionally making its presence felt to the living. For visitors walking through its galleries, there is a heightened awareness of the lives and struggles that have passed before them. The museum becomes more than a repository of artifacts. It is a place where the stories of Ukrainian immigrants, war survivors, and cultural pioneers persist, sometimes in forms that cannot be explained. The Ukrainian National Museum is a living, breathing testament to heritage, where history and haunting intertwine, leaving an indelible impression on all who enter its halls. The Museum of Broadcast Communications in Chicago, while widely celebrated for its rich collection of radio and television history, harbors stories far more unsettling than static on an old television screen. Beyond its educational exhibits and interactive displays, both visitors and staff have reported experiences suggesting that the energy of the past broadcasts, the voices of announcers, and the presence of performers have lingered in spectral form, unwilling to fully leave the rooms they once occupied. One of the most common reports comes from security personnel working late-night shifts. As the museum empties and the ambient hum of air conditioning and distant city noise fades, guards describe sudden flickers of light emanating from equipment that is completely powered down. Old radio transmitters and television sets occasionally spark to life, casting pale glows across empty galleries. These moments are often accompanied by faint whispers, fragments of dialogue, or the low murmur of voices that sound uncannily like radio announcers from decades past. In some cases, guards have reported hearing the unmistakable crackle of static, followed by the abrupt clarity of a news report or a commercial jingle. As if the equipment itself is replaying memories it refuses to release. Visitors, too, have encountered strange occurrences while exploring exhibits showcasing the evolution of broadcasting technology. Some have reported seeing shadowy figures behind the glass cases. These figures appear to be dressed in mid-20th century attire, perhaps representing the technicians, performers, or studio staff who once worked with the equipment now on display. Witnesses describe these apparitions as pausing to inspect items, adjusting knobs on equipment that is long, non-functional, or standing silently as though waiting for a broadcast to resume. When approached, the figures vanish without a trace, leaving only an echo of movement and the lingering scent of old electronics in the air. The museum's radio studio exhibits, which allow visitors to experience what it felt like to broadcast from an earlier era, are particularly known for eerie activity after hours. Staff have recounted hearing the scratch of papers and the turning of knobs, despite the exhibits being powered off. Faint voices are sometimes heard reading scripts, laughing softly, or rehearsing lines, giving the sensation that the personalities of the past still inhabit the room. Some describe hearing complete segments of old radio shows, played in perfect clarity, even though no equipment is running and no recording devices are active. The effect is deeply unsettling, especially for those who recognize the voices of famous announcers or performers. Television exhibits are not exempt from these experiences. Patrons have reported seeing the flicker of images on old monitors, images that appear to be looping broadcasts from decades prior. Some have glimpsed presenters walking across sets, frozen mid-motion, only to disappear when approached. Others describe hearing the distinct laughter of audience members in old studio recordings, even when the exhibit is completely empty and silent to all senses but their own. The feeling is often accompanied by a sudden drop in temperature, a chill that seems to flow directly from the equipment or the space itself. Staff members often remark that the paranormal phenomena are most intense in sections of the museum dedicated to historic newsrooms and television studios. Here, the artifacts are more than relics, they are remnants of human energy, capturing the emotions, tension, and excitement of live broadcasting. Old microphones, cameras, and control panels are reported to exhibit movement or activity of their own, and some staff swear they have felt an invisible presence brushing past them as they walk between displays. Many accounts suggest that the museum is less a haunted building and more a vessel, retaining the intangible echoes of communication that were once transmitted through these technologies. Even visitors who do not linger in the galleries often notice subtle, inexplicable phenomena. Some have felt a cold draft when the doors are closed, heard faint footsteps following them through the halls, or experienced the sensation of being watched while observing static-filled monitors. Others have described the faint aroma of old paper, ink, or electronics appearing suddenly, adding a sensory dimension to the ghostly activity. Occasionally, guests have reported feeling an invisible hand guiding them toward certain displays. as if unseen curators are eager to draw attention to stories that remain unfinished or overlooked. Paranormal investigators who have explored the museum note high levels of electromagnetic activity in areas surrounding vintage equipment. EVP recordings frequently capture fragments of speech, sometimes in the clear tones of broadcasters from the past, other times in distorted whispers. Video monitoring occasionally reveals fleeting shadows or disturbances in reflections that cannot be attributed to normal environmental factors. These anomalies lend credence to the idea that the Museum of Broadcast Communications is a place where the boundary between the living and the energetic residue of past communicators is particularly thin. Despite the unnerving occurrences, the museum continues to attract visitors eager to experience both history and, for some, the thrill of the unexplained. Many interpret the phenomena not as malevolent, but as echoes of passion and dedication from the individuals who once breathed life into the world of radio and television. The present seems tethered to the energy of creation, of live broadcasts and human engagement with media, persisting long after the studios themselves have gone silent. Ultimately, the Museum of Broadcast Communications is more than a repository for historical equipment. It is a space where time and energy intertwine. Apparitions in period clothing, flickering monitors, phantom broadcasts, whispered voices, and sudden chills serve as reminders that the past is never fully gone. Visitors leave with a sense that, while the museum preserves the history of communication, it also preserves the essence of those who lived, breathed, and spoke through these devices. Here, the voices of the past continue to echo, reaching across decades to remind the living that the history of broadcasting is inseparable from the spirits who once animated it. The Polish National Alliance Museum in Chicago, a repository of Polish American history and culture, is more than a celebration of heritage. It has a history of unexplained phenomena that many describe as distinctly paranormal. Visitors and staff alike have recounted experiences that suggest the museum is not simply a place for preserving artifacts, but also a space where the energy of the past lingers, manifesting in shadowy forms, chilling presences, and whispers in a language from a bygone era. Among the most commonly reported occurrences are sightings of shadow figures. Witnesses describe dark silhouettes moving along hallways or lingering near displays, often vanishing when approached. These figures are sometimes seen near early 20th century artifacts, such as traditional clothing, photographs, and documents, as if the spirits are drawn to objects tied to their former lives. The shadows are described as human-shaped, but indistinct, their movements fluid and silent, giving the impression of beings that exist just beyond the reach of the living. Many staff members have reported sudden, inexplicable chills while walking through empty galleries. These cold spots often appear without warning, lingering for several seconds before dissipating. Some have felt as though an invisible presence is brushing past them or standing close, even when no one else is in the vicinity. These sensations are particularly intense near exhibits containing historical letters, ceremonial objects, and relics from early Polish immigrants, suggesting that the spirits may be tethered to items of cultural and emotional significance. Whispers in Polish are another hallmark of the museum's paranormal activity. Visitors often report hearing fragments of conversation, sometimes faint and distant, other times surprisingly clear. The words are usually indistinguishable to those who do not understand the language, but Polish-speaking staff have occasionally discerned phrases that seem to reference family, community, or the hardships faced by immigrants in the early 1900s. These whispered echoes often occur in areas where the air feels heavy or still, creating an unsettling atmosphere that hints at unfinished business or lingering memories. Objects moving without explanation have also been documented. Staff recount cases where books, pamphlets, or small artifacts have shifted slightly overnight. Despite security measures and careful handling, some have reported the sensation of being guided toward specific displays, as though unseen hands are directing attention to particular objects. Perhaps stories the spirits wish to tell. These subtle movements, combined with the cold drafts and whispers, contribute to a sense that the museum itself is alive with the energy of its past inhabitants. The museum's offices and storage areas, often quiet after hours, are not immune to these phenomena. Staff working late into the evening have described hearing footsteps on empty floors, doors opening or closing without cause, and the occasional distant sound of a chair scraping against the floor. These incidents are usually brief, disappearing as quickly as they appear. But they leave a lingering feeling that the space is being watched. Visitors have also reported visual anomalies, such as flickers of movement in peripheral vision, the brief appearance of figures reflected in glass cases, or shadows cast in directions inconsistent with the lighting. Some claim to have glimpsed individuals in period clothing, appearing to observe them or the artifacts before dissolving into nothingness. These fleeting encounters often leave witnesses questioning the reality of what they saw. But repeated reports from multiple people over the years suggest that the experiences are more than mere imagination. Paranormal investigators who have explored the museum have documented unusual electromagnetic readings in specific areas, particularly near early exhibits and display cases. EVPs, electronic voice phenomena, occasionally capture whispers or exclamations in polish, often indecipherable but unmistakably human in tone. Video monitoring sometimes reveals shadowy shapes or distortions that cannot be explained by lighting or reflections, lending credibility to the numerous eyewitness accounts of ghostly activity. The museum's cultural and historical significance may explain why these phenomena are so pronounced. Many of the artifacts represent the lives, struggles, and traditions of Polish immigrants who faced significant hardships in their new homeland. The emotional resonance embedded in these objects could be acting as a magnet for lingering energy, preserving the essence of the individuals who once interacted with them. Some believe that these spirits are not malevolent, but instead serve as a bridge between past and present, reminding visitors of the human stories behind the exhibits. Despite or perhaps because of its spectral reputation, the Polish National Alliance Museum continues to attract curious visitors and researchers alike. Those who are sensitive to paranormal activity often experience a heightened sense of awareness, feeling as if they are walking among the echoes of history itself. For many, the combination of historical artifacts and unexplained phenomena creates an immersive experience, blending education with a touch of the uncanny. In conclusion, the Polish National Alliance Museum is more than a cultural institution. It is a place where the past refuses to be entirely silent. Shadow figures, whispers in polish, cold spots, and subtle movements of objects all contribute to an atmosphere charged with lingering energy. Visitors leave with a sense that the museum is alive, in a way beyond its physical exhibits, inhabited by the spirits of those who lived, worked, and left their mark on the Polish-American community. It is a reminder that history is not only recorded in artifacts and documents, but also in the unseen impressions that remain long after the people themselves have passed, waiting to be noticed by those who walk its halls. The Swedish Folk Art Museum in Chicago, a treasure trove of traditional Scandinavian craftsmanship, is renowned for its intricate displays of folk paintings, textiles, and carved wooden objects. Yet beneath its cultural significance lies a subtle but persistent undercurrent of the paranormal, as staff and visitors alike have reported experiences that suggest the spirits of past artisans remain among their creations. Many visitors describe an unsettling sensation upon entering the galleries, as if invisible eyes are observing their every movement. This feeling is often accompanied by a sudden chill, an inexplicable drop in temperature that seems localized to certain exhibits. Some staff members have recounted walking past a display of intricately painted Dalo horses, only to feel a prickling awareness that someone or something is standing just behind them, though the space is otherwise empty. Whispers in Swedish are among the most commonly reported phenomena. These are typically faint, distant, and sometimes incomprehensible to non-Swedish speakers. But occasionally fragments of familiar words emerge, like arbetwork, him home, or makla paint. The voices appear to emanate from the very walls or from behind displays, creating the sensation that the past artisans are offering guidance or perhaps issuing silent warnings. Employees have noted that these whispers often intensify during quiet evenings, when the museum is nearly empty, suggesting a heightened sensitivity to lingering energy when modern distractions are absent. Shadowy movements are another recurring element of the museum's haunted reputation. Witnesses describe fleeting silhouettes darting across walls or flickering near display cases, only to vanish when observed directly. In some instances, shadows appear to follow the contours of painted panels or carvings, almost as if the figures are interacting with the objects themselves. Visitors who notice these anomalies often report a shiver running down their spine, a visceral acknowledgement that the environment is more alive than its quiet, orderly galleries would suggest. Occasionally, artifacts themselves appear to shift slightly, creating a subtle but unnerving impression that they are not entirely stationary. Staff members have discovered small items, such as wooden figurines or painted utensils, slightly displaced from their previous arrangements, despite security measures and careful handling. These movements, though minor, amplify the sense that the museum is not merely a space for passive observation, but a dynamic environment where past and present intersect. Late-night employees often experience the most intense activity. Some recount hearing the soft tapping of a carving tool against wood, even when the workshop section is locked and empty. Others have glimpsed figures in traditional Swedish attire standing near exhibits, holding brushes or chisels, only to see them vanish when approached. These apparitions are consistently tied to areas highlighting hands-on craftsmanship, reinforcing the idea that the lingering spirits are connected to the act of creation itself. Even the museum's open-air sections, which feature Swedish-style cottages and gardens, are not free from strange occurrences. Visitors have reported the sensation of being watched while walking past miniature structures, and some have heard whispers or faint laughter carried on the breeze. Occasionally, shadows appear to cross the path of the unwary, moving against the natural flow of light and shadow, as if the spirits are walking alongside them unseen. Paranormal investigators who have visited the Swedish Folk Art Museum have documented unusual electromagnetic readings in certain galleries, particularly around handcrafted furniture and painted panels. Electronic voice phenomena, EVPs, have captured faint Swedish words and murmurs, sometimes repeating fragments of conversations that may have taken place decades ago. Video footage occasionally reveals indistinct shapes and movements that defy explanation, lending credence to the numerous eyewitness accounts of ghostly activity. The museum's history may explain why these hauntings are so concentrated. Many of the pieces were created by immigrants who poured their skill, labor, and cultural identity into every brushstroke and carving. The emotional resonance of these objects may act as a magnet for residual energy, preserving a connection to the people who crafted them. Visitors often remark that the museum feels unusually immersive, as if time itself is layered with past and present. The combination of traditional folk art and paranormal activity creates an atmosphere that is both educational and eerie, inviting contemplation while evoking a subtle sense of unease. For some, the experience is thrilling. For others, it is a reminder that cultural heritage can carry with it unseen, enduring echoes of those who lived it. In conclusion, the Swedish Folk Art Museum is more than a collection of beautifully crafted objects. It is a space where the past continues to leave its mark in ways that are both tangible and intangible. Whispered Swedish phrases, shadowy figures, cold drafts, and subtle shifts in artifacts all contribute to a persistent feeling that the artisans of long ago remain vigilant, watching over their creations. Visitors and staff alike are reminded that history is not only preserved in objects and documentation, but also in the unseen presence of those who shaped it, a lingering energy that continues to inhabit the museum long after the artists themselves have passed. The Oriental Museum of Chicago, renowned for its extensive collection of artifacts from across Asia, carries a reputation that extends beyond its cultural and historical significance. Among the serene displays of pottery, scrolls, statues, and ceremonial items, there is an undercurrent of the supernatural that has long intrigued staff, visitors, and paranormal enthusiasts alike. Many who enter the museum report an atmosphere that is both reverent and unsettling, a sensation that history is alive and, in some inexplicable way, watching. Staff members working late hours frequently recount experiences that defy conventional explanation. Some describe hearing faint chants echoing through the halls, even when the museum is completely empty. These sounds often seem to originate near objects with religious or ceremonial significance, such as intricately carved Buddhist statues or ancient ritual vessels. The chants are rarely loud or continuous, but appear intermittently, sometimes accompanied by the soft shuffle of invisible footsteps moving across the polished floors. Visitors have also reported an uneasy sense of being observed. In some galleries, particularly those containing fragile scrolls or sacred items, people have felt sudden drops in temperature, as though cold air were exhaling from the objects themselves. This sensation is often coupled with the impression that unseen figures are moving just beyond the edge of vision, figures that vanish when one turns to confront them. Some guests describe shadowy silhouettes gliding between display cases, occasionally pausing near an artifact before fading into the darkness. Flickering lights are another hallmark of the museum's paranormal activity. Exhibit lights, meant to highlight delicate carvings or paintings, sometimes dim or flare without cause. Staff have recounted situations where multiple lights along a single corridor simultaneously flicker, leaving the space in near total darkness for several moments before returning to normal. These occurrences are particularly common in rooms housing ceremonial masks, gilded shrines, or objects associated with ancestral worship. Some speculate that the artifacts themselves may carry residual energy from the rituals they were once part of, manifesting in subtle manipulations of the environment. A number of security personnel have described experiences that suggest more than mere atmospheric effects. One guard reported seeing a figure in traditional Asian attire walking slowly through a gallery while inspecting the displays. When he attempted to follow, the figure disappeared around a corner, leaving no trace. On other occasions, guards have heard the soft brushing of robes or the faint clinking of metal, reminiscent of ceremonial instruments. Yet no one is present. These unexplained events are often concentrated in the late evening hours, when the museum is silent and empty, suggesting a heightened sensitivity of the environment when human activity is minimal. Visitors sometimes encounter anomalies that are subtle but deeply unsettling. Photographs occasionally capture faint orbs near statues or ritual objects, and some people have reported feeling a guiding presence, gently directing their attention toward particular displays. Others have described the sensation of invisible hands brushing against their arms or shoulders, an experience that leaves a lingering sense of both caution and awe. In one particularly striking account, a researcher examining a collection of prayer scrolls noted that several inscriptions appeared to glow faintly when no light was shining directly upon them. When touched, the scrolls felt unnaturally cold, as if the material itself had absorbed centuries of unseen energy. Around the same time, the researcher reported hearing the faint murmur of voices speaking in languages he could not recognize, punctuated by the occasional metallic clink of ritual instruments. These occurrences, though anecdotal, reinforce the idea that the museum's artifacts may act as conduits for lingering spirits or energies connected to their original ceremonial use. Paranormal investigators have taken an interest in the Oriental Museum, documenting a range of unusual phenomena. Electromagnetic anomalies have been detected near certain statues, especially those depicting deities or ancestral figures. Electronic voice phenomena, EVPs, occasionally capture faint chanting or whispers in Asian languages, often repeating fragments of words that suggest reverence, warning, or guidance. Some infrared video footage shows fleeting shapes moving along hallways or in gallery corners, always avoiding direct observation, further lending credence to eyewitness reports. The museum's staff often describe these events as both unnerving and oddly respectful. Many believe that the spirits or energies present are tied to the original ceremonial purposes of the artifacts, and that they are not malevolent but rather guardians, maintaining vigilance over the objects and the knowledge they embody. The subtle presence of these spirits seems to heighten the sense of history, connecting visitors not only to the past, but also to the unseen layers of cultural and spiritual practice that the museum preserves. In addition to the galleries themselves, the museum's ancillary spaces are not free from activity. Offices and storage rooms, particularly those housing lesser-known artifacts or items awaiting restoration, have seen flickering lights, unexplained sounds, and the sensation of being watched. Staff working alone in these areas frequently report sudden chills and the feeling of invisible observers moving among the shelves, reinforcing the idea that the museum's supernatural energy is pervasive and not limited to its public-facing exhibits. In conclusion, the Oriental Museum of Chicago is far more than a repository of Asian art and artifacts. It is a place where the past seems to breathe, where whispered chants, shadowy figures, cold drafts, and subtle movements of objects hint at a presence that transcends the material world. Visitors and staff alike are reminded that the museum's treasures are not merely historical, but also living conduits of spiritual and cultural energy, preserving the intentions, reverence, and perhaps the spirits of those who created them. In the quiet moments between footsteps and ambient lighting, the museum becomes a liminal space, a meeting point where the living encounter the echoes of ancient ceremonies, and the unseen guardians of history continue their eternal watch. The Irish American Heritage Center Museum in Chicago, a vibrant hub of cultural preservation, is renowned for its dedication to celebrating Irish history, art, and immigrant life. Yet, beneath the warmth of its exhibitions and lively programming lies a quieter, more unsettling presence that has intrigued staff, visitors, and paranormal enthusiasts alike. Many who explore the museum after hours, or even during less crowded times, report experiences that defy conventional explanation, suggesting that the spirits of early Irish settlers linger among the artifacts, whispering fragments of their past into the present. Staff members frequently recount sensations of sudden cold drafts sweeping through certain galleries, often without windows or ventilation, that could account for the chill. These cold spots are particularly pronounced near displays featuring historical documents, photographs, and personal effects of immigrants who arrived in Chicago during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Many describe the air growing heavy, almost tangible, as though the museum itself were exhaling memories and sorrow from decades gone by. Shadowy movements are another hallmark of the museum's paranormal activity. Visitors and staff alike have reported fleeting figures darting across rooms, moving just beyond the edge of vision. These shadows often appear near exhibits of everyday life furniture, clothing, and household items carried across the Atlantic by Irish families seeking a new beginning. Observers have described seeing figures pause to examine these items, only to vanish when approached, leaving an empty room and an inexplicable sense of presence. Whispers in Gaelic are among the most chilling experiences reported. Even those unfamiliar with the language sometimes catch phrases that suggest guidance, warning, or sorrow. Staff working late in the museum have noted that these whispers seem to move with them, appearing suddenly near an empty display case or echoing faintly down a hallway. Some employees insist that the voices are polite, almost formal, as if the spirits are carrying themselves with the dignity they held in life. Yet the repeated murmurs create a persistent feeling of being watched. The ghostly figures of early Irish settlers have been glimpsed by several visitors. In one account, a lone visitor exploring the museum after closing noticed a man in period clothing wandering through a gallery of historical photographs. His gaze seemed fixed on a particular image of a crowded tenement street. When the visitor attempted to follow, the figure vanished into the shadows, leaving behind only a faint chill and the sense of having witnessed someone tethered between worlds. In other instances, small groups of figures are reported moving quietly through exhibits, as if engaged in the routines of their former lives, polishing an object, leafing through a book, or pausing to converse in hushed tones. Even the artifacts themselves appear to react to the unseen presence. Objects occasionally shift slightly overnight, photographs lean at angles they were not placed, and small items seem to disappear only to reappear in unexpected locations. Staff often attribute these occurrences to residual energy, believing that the belongings of these immigrants carry echoes of the hands that once used them, echoes strong enough to make subtle movements manifest in the modern day. The museum's library and archive rooms are particularly noted for paranormal phenomena. Researchers and volunteers working late have described cold spots that seem to follow them along narrow aisles, accompanied by faint scratching or rustling sounds from books that are untouched. The sensation of being observed is nearly constant in these spaces, intensifying when one pauses to examine historical documents or personal letters of Irish settlers. Some have even claimed to feel a light brush against their shoulder or arm, as if a ghostly hand were guiding them to a specific text or photograph. Security personnel who patrol the museum after hours often report the most vivid activity. Footsteps echo in empty halls, doors creak open on their own, and the faint scent of peat smoke associated with traditional Irish hearths occasionally permeates rooms without explanation. Some guards have described glimpsing figures standing near the stairwells or gallery corners, staring silently before vanishing when confronted. The consistency of these reports over decades suggests a persistent energy tied to the museum's history and the lives it preserves. Visitors have also experienced a sense of temporal dislocation, as if the museum is capable of folding past and present into the same moment. People report sudden, unexplainable familiarity with spaces they are seeing for the first time, hearing distant voices that echo in rhythm with their own movements, or seeing reflections in display cases that do not match their own image. These fleeting sensations leave many with the impression that the museum itself is a conduit between the present and the lives of those who came before. Despite the unsettling experiences, the museum remains a place of reverence. Staff often interpret the paranormal activity as protective rather than malevolent, viewing the spirits as guardians of heritage and memory. The presence of these spectral visitors reminds contemporary audiences that the lives and struggles of early Irish immigrants are never entirely forgotten. In conclusion, the Irish American Heritage Center Museum is far more than a repository of cultural artifacts. It is a space where history breathes in unexpected ways, where whispers in Gaelic, shadowy figures, and cold drafts speak of lives once lived and journeys undertaken across the ocean. Visitors and staff alike encounter reminders that the past persists in subtle, sometimes startling forms, whether through moving shadows, faint chants, or objects inexplicably shifting. The museum reveals a world where memory, legacy, and spirit converge, creating an atmosphere both haunting and profoundly alive. Here, the echoes of Irish settlers linger eternally, ensuring that the stories of hardship, hope, and heritage are never fully silenced. The National Veterans Art Museum in Chicago, dedicated to honoring the sacrifices of American servicemen and women, is a space imbued not only with artistic expression, but also with the lingering weight of history. While its galleries display powerful and evocative works depicting the realities of war, visitors and staff have long reported experiences that suggest the echoes of the past are more than metaphorical. Paranormal activity at the museum has become part of its lore, with witnesses describing shadowy soldiers, phantom footsteps, and whispering voices that seem to arise from the very walls themselves. Many of the reports come from staff who spend long hours alone in the galleries after visitors have departed. Security personnel recount hearing the unmistakable sound of marching boots on the polished floors, footsteps that echo in empty corridors, and the faint clatter of metal imagined at first, but consistently reported night after night. Some have described feeling sudden chills, cold spots that appear without any logical cause, often near displays depicting battle scenes or military equipment. The presence is described as heavy, almost tangible, pressing against the senses in a way that goes beyond simple imagination. Visitors to have reported unsettling experiences. One gallery, devoted to depictions of soldiers in combat, has been the site of numerous ghostly sightings. People have described seeing shadowy figures in uniform, sometimes moving as though inspecting the artwork, other times standing silently at attention before fading into the dimly lit corners of the room. These figures are often perceived as indistinct at first shapes in the periphery of vision, but they seem to carry an unmistakable weight, as if the souls of those who fought are momentarily manifesting among the art created in their honor. Whispers are another common phenomenon at the museum. Some staff claim to hear fragmented conversations, murmurs of strategy, or quiet commands in empty galleries. Others have heard names being called softly, sometimes matching the names of soldiers memorialized in the exhibits. Visitors have also reported hearing these disembodied voices, often when standing alone near exhibits focused on specific wars or battles. The whispers are rarely coherent, but carry a distinct sense of urgency or warning, as though the past is attempting to communicate with the present. Unseen touches have been reported repeatedly. Staff members moving through the museum after hours describe the sensation of a hand brushing against their shoulder or a gentle pressure on their back when no one is present. Sometimes, these touches seem to guide the individual toward particular displays or areas of interest, suggesting an intentionality behind the presence. In other instances, the touches are accompanied by sudden drops in temperature or an inexplicable feeling of heaviness, reinforcing the impression that the museum is alive with unseen observers. Certain exhibits are consistently associated with paranormal activity. Artworks depicting battlefields, fallen soldiers, and moments of extreme human emotion seem to attract more reports of cold spots, shadow figures, and whispered words. Staff and visitors alike often report a sense of being watched when lingering near these pieces. Reflections in the glass cases sometimes appear to show shapes or figures that vanish when one looks directly at them, creating a disorienting experience that blurs the line between art and apparition. Even in common areas, such as hallways and stairwells, the museum has its share of inexplicable occurrences. Footsteps echo behind lone staff members, doors creak open without warning, and faint metallic sounds like the clinking of dog tags or the adjustment of gear can be heard in otherwise silent spaces. These phenomena are often reported in areas adjacent to major exhibits, suggesting that the energy is concentrated near representations of historical conflict and personal sacrifice. Some witnesses describe a sense of temporal dislocation, a feeling that the events of the past are folding into the present. A staff member might stand in front of a painting and suddenly sense the tension of soldiers poised for battle, or hear what feels like a distant clash of arms. Visitors have similarly reported sudden waves of emotion when interacting with certain pieces, as though the artworks act as conduits for memories that extend beyond canvas and sculpture. Interestingly, many of the paranormal experiences at the National Veterans Art Museum are perceived as respectful rather than threatening. Shadowy figures often maintain distance, and the whispers rarely convey malice. Some staff interpret these manifestations as spirits honoring the space that commemorates their service, lingering not to frighten but to witness the continued remembrance of their sacrifices. The museum, in this sense, serves not only as a repository of art, but also as a bridge connecting the present with the experiences of those who endured the horrors of war. Over the years, paranormal investigators have taken an interest in the museum, setting up audio and visual recording equipment in hopes of capturing evidence of these phenomena. Some have documented faint orbs, unexplained shadows, and electronic voice phenomena that align with witness reports of footsteps and whispers. While skeptics may attribute these events to imagination or the power of suggestion, the consistency and frequency of experiences suggest something more enigmatic at play. Ultimately, the National Veterans Art Museum is a space where history, memory, and spirit converge. The presence of shadowy soldiers, phantom footsteps, and whispered voices reminds visitors that the sacrifices of those who served are never truly gone. The museum not only preserves the artistic interpretation of war, but also seems to harbor echoes of the very lives and struggles it seeks to honor. For those who walk its halls, particularly after dark, the line between past and present blurs, creating a profound and often chilling connection to the individuals who lived, fought, and sometimes died before us. Here, amidst the art and artifacts, the weight of history is not only felt in the stories told, but also in the silent footsteps, the faint murmurs, and the lingering presence of those who came before. The National Veterans Art Museum is more than a gallery. It is a haunted space where memory and spirit intertwine, ensuring that the echoes of courage, sacrifice, and loss remain eternally alive. The Polish Museum of Chicago, dedicated to preserving the rich history and culture of Polish immigrants, is a place steeped in stories of perseverance, struggle, and community. Yet, beyond its cultural and historical significance, the museum has developed a reputation for paranormal activity, with numerous reports of ghostly encounters and unexplained phenomena that continue to intrigue both staff and visitors. Many of the unusual experiences occur after hours, when the museum is quiet and most of the exhibits are closed to the public. Security personnel and staff have described hearing footsteps echoing through the hallways when no one else is present. The sounds often move from room to room, starting softly and growing louder, as if someone or something is pacing along the display areas. These footsteps are frequently accompanied by cold drafts or sudden chills, which seem to follow certain individuals, leaving them shivering despite normal indoor temperatures. Visitors during the day have also reported strange sensations when exploring exhibits dedicated to early 20th century Polish immigrants. Some claim to feel the unmistakable impression of being watched. A sense of presence is often described as heavy and almost tangible, pressing down on the shoulders or lingering nearby, even when the gallery is empty. Patrons have reported sudden goosebumps, unexplained unease, or the fleeting feeling that someone has just brushed past them, though no one else is in the room. Shadowy figures are another common element in the museum's paranormal accounts. Witnesses often describe seeing vague human shapes in the periphery of their vision, only for them to vanish when looked at directly. These apparitions are sometimes dressed in period clothing, evoking images of early Polish settlers and immigrants. Some staff have recounted moments when a figure seemed to pause near a display, as if examining the artifacts before disappearing entirely. Others have reported seeing fleeting silhouettes behind glass cases, only to find the exhibits undisturbed upon closer inspection. Whispers and faint voices also play a significant role in the museum's eerie atmosphere. Staff working late in the archives or the upper gallery floors often hear murmurs that cannot be traced to any human source. Sometimes these are coherent words, spoken in Polish, though fragmented, as if echoes of conversations from long ago. At other times, the voices are nearly indecipherable, resembling murmurs of activity or soft discussions occurring just beyond perception. Visitors exploring alone have occasionally reported hearing their names called, or catching snippets of phrases related to the struggles and hardships of the immigrant experience, reinforcing the sense that the past lingers alongside the present. Physical phenomena have been reported as well. Staff have seen objects seemingly move on their own, such as small artifacts shifting slightly on shelves or display cases rattling when no one is nearby. Some describe doors that slowly creak open without explanation, or lights flickering in certain hallways, even when the electrical system shows no faults. These incidents are often concentrated near exhibits depicting difficult periods in Polish history, such as labor disputes, immigration hardships, and wartime experiences, suggesting a connection between the energy of these stories and the paranormal manifestations. The museum's atmosphere is particularly charged in the evenings, when shadows lengthen across the galleries. Staff have noted that the presence feels more active during these hours, with cold spots and ghostly sensations intensifying as the night progresses. One security guard recounted an encounter where a shadowy figure appeared near a display of wartime memorabilia. The figure seemed to glance toward him before vanishing into the darkness, leaving only an oppressive sense of gravity in its wake. Others have described experiencing sudden pressure on their shoulders, as if a spirit were attempting to communicate or guide them to a specific exhibit or area of interest. For visitors, the experience can be both unsettling and fascinating. Many report a mixture of awe and fear as they sense the lingering energy of past lives within the museum walls. The combination of historical artifacts and paranormal occurrences creates a unique environment, where the stories of Polish immigrants feel intensely alive. not only through the exhibits, but also through the spectral impressions left behind. Some paranormal investigators have attempted to document these phenomena. Recordings have captured faint voices, inexplicable shadows, and occasional fluctuations in electromagnetic readings near certain artifacts, while skeptics attribute these experiences to imagination or suggestion. The sheer consistency of reports from multiple staff and visitors suggests that something unexplainable is at work within the museum. The Polish Museum of Chicago thus exists as more than just a cultural institution. It is a place where history, memory, and spirit intersect, offering visitors a tangible connection to the lives of those who came before. The presence of shadowy figures, whispered voices, and unexplained movements serves as a reminder that the struggles and stories of early Polish immigrants continue to resonate, lingering in the museum's quiet halls. Walking through the galleries, one might feel the weight of the past pressing gently yet insistently, a silent acknowledgement of the hardships, perseverance, and enduring spirit of a community that helped shape Chicago. The museum's haunting is not malevolent. Rather, it acts as a bridge between eras, a living testament to the enduring presence of those who walked the city's streets decades ago. For those sensitive to such energies, the Polish Museum of Chicago offers both a haunting and profound experience, where history and the supernatural intertwine, ensuring that the legacy of its people remains vividly alive. The American Writers' Museum, dedicated to preserving and celebrating the legacy of literary figures, is widely known for its innovative exhibits and interactive displays, yet beyond its educational and cultural purpose. The museum has developed a reputation for paranormal occurrences that continue to intrigue staff, visitors, and those fascinated by the unusual. Many of these phenomena suggest that the spirits of past authors may linger, keeping a silent watch over their works and the spaces that honor them. Several reports of unusual activity have come from staff who work late into the evening. Custodians and security personnel often recount hearing the faint clatter of typewriter keys or the soft scratch of pen on paper in areas where no one is present. These sounds are not random. They often correspond to sections dedicated to specific authors, as though the spirits are reenacting moments of creative inspiration. Some have described walking past certain exhibits and hearing faint whispers reciting lines of poetry or fragments of prose, words that vanish when they stop to listen more closely. Visitors, too, have noticed peculiar sensations while exploring the museum. Some report feeling a sudden, inexplicable chill, as though the air itself carries the weight of countless literary voices. Others experienced a sensation of being gently observed, particularly near displays showcasing the works of classic American authors. Patrons have recounted moments when they turned to see a shadowy figure standing nearby, only for it to vanish when approached, leaving behind a lingering sense of presence that cannot be explained by lighting or architecture. The phenomena are not limited to auditory and visual experiences. Physical interactions have been reported sporadically, such as objects shifting slightly on shelves or the gentle movement of exhibit pieces without any obvious cause. Staff have noted that these occurrences are more frequent near manuscripts, first editions, and personal artifacts belonging to notable writers, suggesting a connection between the historical and literary significance of the items and the manifestations themselves. One particularly unsettling report comes from the museum's interactive writing lab, where visitors can compose their own stories. In one instance, a security guard described entering the room to check an alarm and witnessing a faint shadow moving along the walls, following the curve of the writing tables before disappearing entirely. Such events reinforce the sense that the spirits of authors past are not only present, but actively engaging with the creative spaces they once occupied. Shadowy figures are a common theme in these accounts. Many staff members and visitors have described seeing vague human shapes in the corners of their vision. These shadows often seem to pause near particular exhibits, as if contemplating or interacting with the artifacts. When approached, they dissipate or vanish entirely, leaving only an oppressive sense of history and presence behind. Some eyewitnesses report that these figures resemble writers from the late 19th or early 20th centuries, dressed in period attire, further enhancing the feeling that the museum is a living archive, not only of written works, but of the people who created them. Whispers and indistinct voices are frequently reported, often in areas dedicated to authors known for their spoken word or performance of their own work. Visitors and staff alike have reported hearing faint phrases in literary cadence, as if reciting poetry or dialogue. Sometimes the whispers are coherent, repeating well-known lines, while at other times they are fragmented, leaving listeners with a haunting impression of incomplete thought or unfinished stories. In some cases, patrons have claimed to hear their own names called in a soft, literary tone, as if the spirits are drawing attention to their presence or inviting them to engage more deeply with the exhibits. The museum's unusual energy is amplified during quieter hours. Evening security rounds and after-hours maintenance have produced some of the most vivid accounts. Cold spots often appear without warning, especially near manuscripts or first editions. And some staff have felt unseen pressure, as if a presence is lingering closely behind them. One guard reported feeling a hand lightly brush against his shoulder while checking a display of early American literary magazines, even though he was alone in the room. Such experiences suggest an intimate connection between the space, its artifacts, and the lingering energies of the literary figures themselves. The American Writers' Museum thus functions as both a cultural institution and a site of lingering historical energy. The reports of shadows, whispers, and mysterious auditory phenomena suggest that the creative spirits of past authors remain attached to the museum, perhaps ensuring that their works and legacies continue to be recognized and honored. The experience of walking through the galleries becomes more than an educational journey. It transforms into a passage through history, memory, and the spectral presence of those who shaped the literary landscape. Visitors who encounter these phenomena often describe a mix of awe and trepidation. The museum's atmosphere is simultaneously inspiring and unsettling, as it bridges the temporal gap between the living and the long-departed voices of American literature. Whether hearing faint typing, catching glimpses of a shadowy figure, or feeling the weight of an unseen presence, those who explore the museum are reminded that the power of storytelling transcends time and mortality. Ultimately, the American Writers' Museum offers a unique experience, one where history, culture, and the supernatural intersect. The lingering spirits of past authors, manifesting through whispers, shadows, and mysterious sounds, create an environment that is both haunting and profound. Patrons are left with the sense that literature is not only preserved in books and exhibits, but continues to breathe within the very walls, ensuring that the voices of American writers remain ever present, observing, and perhaps even interacting with the curious souls who venture into their domain. The Chicago Fire Academy Museum, a place devoted to honoring the bravery and sacrifice of firefighters, holds an energy that extends beyond mere history. While the museum is filled with carefully preserved helmets, hoses, and firefighting gear, it has become a place where visitors sometimes experience phenomena that defy explanation. Staff and guests alike have reported hearing the shrill wail of alarms, even when no systems are active. These phantom alerts often startle those working late or exploring the quiet halls, echoing as if calling attention to some unseen emergency. Footsteps are a common occurrence here. They are often described as heavy, deliberate, and methodical, moving through empty corridors and exhibit rooms as though the firefighters of long ago are still performing their duties. Some witnesses claim to have followed the sounds only to find no one there. Yet the impression of presence remains, an almost tactile sense of someone passing within arm's reach. Occasionally, these footsteps are accompanied by the soft metallic clang of equipment being handled, suggesting a spectral rehearsal of historical drills or emergency responses. Several visitors have described seeing ghostly figures dressed in period firefighter uniforms. These apparitions are sometimes glimpsed walking past glass display cases, inspecting equipment, or standing in rigid attention as if awaiting orders. The figures often appear semi-transparent, fading in and out of the dim lighting, and disappear entirely when approached. In some instances, witnesses recount feeling a sudden chill, as though the air itself responds to the presence of the spirits. The museum's most active areas are often near exhibits dedicated to historical fires and firefighter memorials. Here, the energy feels heavier, almost charged, as if the tragedies and heroism of the past are imprinted on the very walls. Visitors sometimes report seeing faint shadows dart across the floor or along stairwells, accompanied by soft, almost imperceptible whispers that seem to echo phrases like hurry or hold fast. These whispers are fleeting and cannot be traced to any acoustic source, leaving listeners with the unsettling impression that the spirits are attempting to communicate lessons or warnings from their experiences. Late at night, the sounds of old alarms and machinery sometimes blend with these sightings, creating a chilling ambience. Some have reported that certain sections of the museum feel colder than the rest, with temperature drops happening suddenly and without explanation. Objects on display, while securely mounted, have been found slightly shifted, as though touched by unseen hands. These subtle movements reinforce the feeling that the museum is not entirely devoid of its original inhabitants, the firefighters who dedicated their lives to protecting the city. Paranormal investigators who have visited the museum often report capturing unusual readings on electromagnetic devices, particularly near historical firefighting equipment. Cameras have occasionally recorded anomalies, such as unexplained orbs of light or shadows moving against the expected paths of illumination. Audio devices sometimes pick up faint, structured sounds resembling commands or the movement of boots over metal floors, adding to the growing body of evidence suggesting the presence of residual energy. Despite these eerie occurrences, the museum remains a respected institution, dedicated to preserving the history and bravery of Chicago's firefighters. Many visitors embrace the experiences, considering them a solemn connection to the past and a reminder of the dangers these heroes faced. The spirits, if they truly exist, seem less malevolent and more like echoes of devotion, replaying acts of courage that continue to inspire. For those wandering through the quiet halls after hours, it is impossible to ignore the feeling that the firefighters are still standing watch. The phantom alarms, footsteps, and spectral figures are a haunting tribute to a history steeped in bravery, tragedy, and unwavering service. In the Chicago Fire Academy Museum, the past is not silent. It moves, breathes, and occasionally reaches out to remind the living of the heroism that came before. Chicago's haunted museums are far more than places of learning. They are crossroads of history and the supernatural. From the towering skeletons of the Field Museum to the quiet, artifact-filled rooms of the Deuceable Museum, spirits linger where stories are most vivid. They whisper, they watch, and sometimes they make their presence unmistakably known. Next time you walk through these museums, remember, not all visitors are alive. History doesn't just stay on display. It walks beside you, watches from the shadows, and waits in silence, leaving a trace of dark energy for those brave enough to notice. Chicago's haunted museums remind us that the past is never truly gone. It simply waits, patient and watchful, just beyond our sight.